Lin Fan, what are you standing there for? I'm already ready. A shrill voice laced with haughty superiority cut through the lavish atmosphere aboard the cruise ship. Lin Fan did not even need to look up to know it was Zhao Na, the company's top performing sales rep, calling out to him. As an intern, he should never have been allowed at this corporate party. It was Zhao Na who had told the supervisor they needed an extra hand, and that was how he had gotten onto this vessel. All around him were high-achieving women in swimsuits, holding champagne glasses by the pool. Zhao Na was lying face down on a white lounge chair. She wore a bright, red two-piece swimsuit. She held a bottle of sunscreen and crooked her finger at Lin Fan, summoning him as one would call a dog. Lin Fan, Na's calling you. If you don't need your ears, donate them to someone who does. Supervisor Wang Chong appeared out of nowhere and kicked Lin Fan hard on the calf. The blow stung right down to the bone. Lin Fan said nothing and gritted his teeth as he walked over. Zhao Na rolled over and lay face down again, undoing one strap on the back of her swimsuit, exposing her smooth back. Her waist curved in a graceful line. Rub this in evenly. Zhao Na tossed the bottle onto a side tray. This is thousands worth of body oil. Don't waste it. I'm only letting you do this because you seem honest. Lin Fan squeezed some oil onto her warm back. The moment his palms made contact, several male colleagues nearby stopped chatting and watched intently. Man, this guy gets all the easy perks, one man muttered sourly, his eyes fixed on Lin Fan's hands. Of course, he's the go-to-errand boy. We wouldn't get stuck with jobs like this, another colleague scoffed sarcastically. Even though they had brought their own partners along, they could not help staring at Zhao Na. Zhao Na clearly reveled in being the center of attention. She shifted slightly and glanced back in annoyance. Be gentler. Your hands are rough with calluses. Don't scratch my skin. Lin Fan took a deep breath and kept spreading the oil. Since he could not escape the task, he would simply focus on getting it done. Presently, his gaze drifted past Zhao Na toward the restricted VIP section. Seated there were the most remarkable women on the ship. Su Qingxue, CEO of Shengtang Group, and A-list movie star Lu Feifei. Su Qingxue wore a conservative white one-piece swimsuit that still accentuated her elegant figure. She sat with her legs crossed behind dark sunglasses, her skin glowing in the sunlight. Beside her, Lu Feifei presented a different sight. Over her purple two-piece swimsuit, she wore a sheer lace cover, up that fluttered in the sea breeze. Lin Fan only glanced for a split second, and his throat tightened. What are you staring at? Do you think you are worthy of looking at them? Wang Chong slapped Lin Fan hard across the back of his head. The impact made his ears ring. You are reaching far above your station. One more look and you will regret it. Having berated Lin Fan, Wang Chong immediately switched to a fawning demeanor and hurried toward the VIP area. Ms. Su. Miss Lu, would you like more ice? Shall I bring fresh, cut fruit? Su Qingxue did not lift her head. Lu Feifei gave a polite professional smile and pointed at her empty glass. Even that hollow courtesy made Wang Chong overjoyed. He scurried back and grabbed the fruit platter beside Lin Fan. Lin Fan had just finished applying the oil. Get down to the lower deck and carry more wine. Get out of my sight. Stop dreaming about things you will never have, Wang Chong ordered, shoving him. Lin Fan stumbled and nearly crashed into the railing. He steadied himself and surveyed the crowd. There were barely more than a dozen men, yet dozens of women, all strikingly beautiful. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. What if they were stranded on a remote island for a month? He pushed the fantasy aside and headed toward the dim stairwell. Right then, the blazing sunlight vanished. The sky turned an eerie murky gray. The wind died. Even the sound of waves against the hull fell completely silent. An oppressive stillness descended over everything. What is happening? Why has it gone dark? People removed their sunglasses and stared upward in confusion. Wealthy guests who had been flirting froze mid-motion. Lin Fan spun around toward the horizon. A chill ran down his spine, every hair standing on end. A wall of white water stretched across the entire breadth of the ocean. 100-meter high tsunami advanced toward them. It moved so massively it almost looked slow, yet anyone familiar with the sea knew it meant certain death. Tsunami. The captain's alarm blared shrilly. Hold on. Secure yourselves to fixed objects. Chaos erupted across the deck. Screams and cries echoed. The refined elites who had been discussing business moments earlier scrambled about in blind panic. Civilized pretenses fell away. One man, who had been admiring Zhao Na only minutes before, kicked his partner hard in the stomach in order to snatch a lifebuoy. Get out of my way. The woman crumpled to the ground, shocked and hurt. This was the so-called high society. Su Qingxue jumped to her feet. Her sunglasses slipped off. Fear showed plainly on her beautiful face. But instead of running aimlessly, she gripped the railing tightly. For one brief instant, her eyes met Lin Fan's. There was no haughtiness left, only shared despair. Lu Feifei's legs gave way. Her phone clattered onto the deck. She collapsed to the ground, screaming helplessly. Wang Chong tripped and crawled toward the railing in a pathetic scramble, all his arrogance gone. Lin Fan, who had been on his way to fetch wine, happened to stand beside a heavy steel support pillar, the sturdiest point of the whole ship. Driven by survival instinct, he wrapped both arms and legs around it. The enormous shadow of the waves swallowed the cruise ship. Boom! The tsunami crashed down. The vessel capsized. Water surged in, and the world turned upside down. Lin Fan felt himself lifted, then slammed violently against metal plating. Pain shot through his whole body. Seawater flooded his nostrils, and he choked, gasping for air. Pain. Every part of his body felt battered and broken. Lin Fan forced his eyes open. Bright sunlight stung his pupils. He coughed repeatedly, spitting out mouthfuls of salty seawater. He lay on hot sand. The sound of waves washing over rocks reached his ears. He was alive. He struggled to sit up. The beach lay in ruins, littered with ship wreckage, splintered wood, discarded life vests, and unconscious survivors strewn across the shore. He shook his head to clear the dizziness. His gaze locked onto a nearby rock. Faint, golden semi-transparent text hovered above its surface, visible only to him. Ordinary rock, covered in barnacles which are edible though coarse, textured. One small red crab hides behind it. Danger level, 0. Lin Fan blinked hard and rubbed his eyes. The writing remained, shifting position as he moved his line of sight. Hallucination? A concussion symptom? He turned toward a snapped coconut palm tree to his right. Broken coconut palm. Roughly 200 milliliters of fresh water stored within the trunk. 2 longhorn beetle larvae live beneath the bark. Their protein content is 6 times higher than beef. Lin Fan's heart raced. As an avid web novel reader, he instantly understood what was happening. He had obtained a special ability, the power to see hidden information about everything around him. Cough. Water. Does anyone have water? A weak groan came from not far away. Lin Fan turned to see Zhao Na. She was in a terrible state. Her swimsuit was torn, bruises covered her skin, and her hair was matted with sand and seaweed. She lay on the sand, dazed. When she spotted Lin Fan sitting upright, hope flickered across her face. Lin Fan, water, get me some water quickly. Even in this desperate situation, she still spoke in a commanding tone. Lin Fan watched her coldly. The salt, heavy sea breeze stung open wounds. When Lin Fan did not move immediately, anger flared in Zhao Na's eyes. Back at the company, everyone used to jump to obey whenever she showed the slightest displeasure. Lin Fan, can't you hear me? Go find water. She tried to push herself up, but winced sharply as her bruised waist twinged. All right, Na. Wait here, I will look for some, Lin Fan said, adopting his usual obedient tone. He walked over to the broken coconut tree. Golden text appeared again as he focused his eyes. Broken coconut palm. The unripe coconut fruit holds around 200 milliliters of fresh drinking water. Strike gently on the rear shell to open. The liquid tastes sweet and refreshing. Lin Fan picked up a sharp stone. Bang, bang. He struck the shell until it cracked open. Clear fresh water trickled out. He leaned down and drank deeply, soothing his parched throat. Zhao Na watched from a distance, her lips cracked and bleeding. She crawled toward him across the sand. Give it to me. I need to drink, she demanded, reaching out to grab the fruit. Lin Fan did not make things difficult for her and handed over what remained after he had drunk most of the water. Drink slowly, Na. Zhao Na snatched it and drank greedily. Some liquid spilled down her neck. She coughed a few times, yet her expression softened slightly, though she still looked down on Lin Fan. At that moment, voices carried over from further along the shore. Ms. Su, please watch your step. It was Wang Chong's unmistakable voice. Lin Fan looked over and saw Wang Chong supporting Su Qingxue as they trudged across the uneven sand. Behind them came other survivors, more women than men, every one of them injured. Lu Feifei followed close behind. Her lightweight cover, up, was soaked and clung to her body. Su Qingxue also looked worn out. Her swimsuit was damp from seawater. She pushed Wang Chong away and stood straight despite a painful twisted ankle. Listen to me, everyone, she called out. Crying and shouting will not help. If we are alive, we must focus on surviving. The crowd quieted somewhat. I activated the emergency function on my satellite phone before we went into the water. Su Qingxue held up the dead black device. My group has a rescue team on standby. Once they lock onto our position, helicopters will arrive no later than midnight tonight. Hope ignited across every face. Is that true, Miss Su? We are going to be saved? Wang Chong was beside himself with joy. I never make empty promises, Su Qingxue replied coolly. She slipped back into her leadership role. Now follow my orders. Men, search the surrounding area for supplies, especially fresh water and food. Women, collect dry branches along the tree line to start a fire. Wang Chong, take count of survivors and inventory our resources. Yes, Miss Su. Believing rescue would arrive very soon, everyone hurried to curry favor, hoping it would benefit their careers back home. Hurry up. Get moving. Hey, you Lin Fan. Are you deaf? Wang Chong marched over. Miss Su assigned you work. What are you standing around for? Do you want to lose your job when we get back? Lin Fan ignored Wang Chong and kept his eyes fixed on Su Qingxue. She sat resting on a rock, clutching the broken satellite phone tightly. Only Lin Fan could see golden text floating above it. Damaged satellite phone. Mainboard severely corroded, battery short, circuited. No distress signal was successfully transmitted before submersion. Current rescue probability, 0%. 0% chance of rescue. A cold dread washed over Lin Fan. He lifted his gaze toward the eerily silent primeval jungle stretching inland. More golden words flickered into view. Current coordinates, latitude X, longitude Y, outer edge of the Devil's Triangle. Environmental analysis, severe magnetic interference, total radio silence. The nearest major shipping lane lies 600 nautical miles away. Odds of outside rescue, 0.0001%. The closest humans are astronauts in orbit. Lin Fan stood frozen, his eyes stinging dry. It was over. He had once dreamed about temporary survival on an island followed by rescue. Now they might very well die here. No signals, no maps. How long could modern city dwellers last? 3 days? 5. A seabird squawked overhead, nearly dropping waste on his nose, snapping him back to reality. He glanced at Su Qingxue. The CEO continued organizing the survivors, pale yet composed, fully convinced help was on its way. Should he tell everyone the truth? His lips parted, but he immediately suppressed the thought. He could never tell them. The existing social order holds only because everyone believes the law and rescue will arrive. Once this thin veil is torn away and people realize this is a law, free land, despair will give birth to unbridled evil in an instant. Lin Fan dared not imagine what those so-called elites would do for the last sip of water. If everyone knew there was no way home, murder would carry no prison sentence on this isolated island. Lin Fan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. If return was impossible, he had to survive. In this hellish place, his only advantage was the omniscient hint before his eyes. He refocused his gaze, and the chaotic beach unfolded in a completely different light. Almost everyone around him was frantically scavenging supplies. A sales manager who had always ordered Lin Fan around was on all fours amid rotting seaweed, clutching a swollen Hermes Birkin bag, ignoring the mud and stench clinging to it. His face lit up with wild joy. Not far away, 2 men in in-dress shirts grappled violently. They fought over an overturned metal crate. The crate lay open, dozens of luxury watches scattered across the sand. We've hit the jackpot. We've really hit the jackpot this time. One man slipped a diamond-encrusted Rolex onto his wrist, his face flushed with excitement. This one alone is worth millions. Sell it back home, and I could easily buy a luxury car. Bullshit. I saw it first. The other man lunged forward, ready to attack. Human greed swelled without restraint in that moment. Deep down, none of them believed survival was at stake. They were convinced rescue would come that very night. If they were going home, whatever they grabbed was theirs. Who would bother picking up cheap canned meat and bottled water at a time like this? Lin Fan looked away and turned toward an unremarkable pile of wreckage. Damaged shipping container, severely dented shell. 12 intact cans of luncheon meat lie tucked beneath its lower right corner, fully sealed. Scattered plastic crate. Hidden under women's undergarments and tattered rags is a full case of 500 milliliter bottled drinking water, 24 bottles in total. Without hesitation, Lin Fan quickly shoved aside splintered planks on top. When his fingertips touched the cool surface of a water bottle, the feeling was more reassuring than touching gold. He took off his soaked vest, wrapped the luncheon meat tightly inside, and tied a firm knot. Then he heaved the case of water, intending to find a shaded spot to hide everything. Not far off, Zhao Na slipped a huge diamond ring onto his finger. Glancing over at Lin Fan's actions, she rolled her eyes. Treating trash like treasure. Hopeless. Well, if it isn't our great waiter Lin Fan. A mocking voice rang out right afterward. Lin Fan stopped and glanced sideways. Wang Chong sauntered over with 2 male subordinates. The two men were draped in luxury handbags, watches, and even several gold necklaces looted from every corner. Wang Chang himself carried an unopened bottle of red wine, a bottle of Romani Conti. It had been the star lot at the ship's auction, rumored to start at the price of a sports car. Watching Lin Fan clutching bottled water and canned meat, Wang Chang doubled over laughing, tears nearly streaming down his face. Lin Fan, what's wrong with your brain? Did you swallow too much seawater? Wang Chang pointed at him. Manager Su said rescuers will be here tonight. Helicopters will come and we'll go home. Why are you hoarding this junk? Planning to set up a grocery store for your poor mother? One colleague wearing a newly seized Rolex Submariner sneered and shook his wrist. Exactly, Lin Fan. Look at these watches on my wrist. This ordeal will make us millionaires once we sell them. And you? Cans of food? Are you starving? Don't be too harsh. Another colleague chimed in sarcastically. He used to work as a waiter, after all. Old habits kick in. He's probably saving that water so he can wait on us on the rescue plane. Hoping for a tip, huh? Harsh laughter echoed across the open beach. Lin Fan glanced at the priceless wine in Wang Chang's hand, then at the gold watch on his co-worker's wrist. Golden text materialized once more. Romani Conti 1990, premium red wine containing alcohol. Drinking it accelerates bodily dehydration. Consuming it with no fresh water available amounts to slow suicide. Best served with a coffin. Gold Rolex, heavy metal object. Inedible and undrinkable, of little practical use. The corners of Lin Fan's mouth lifted faintly. Laugh. Laugh all you want. When midnight passed, when helicopter rotors never sounded, when thirst and cold closed in, would they gnaw on gold watches or drink wine to survive? Then those priceless treasures they cherished would not even be worth a single sip of his water. Finished, Lin Fan spoke in an unexpectedly calm, flat tone. If you are, get out of my way. Good dogs don't block the path. What did you say? Wang Chang's face darkened. He had never expected Lin Fan, usually meek and compliant, to talk back. He raised his hand to strike, but before his blow fell, Su Qingshue's voice carried over from the distance. What is all that commotion over there? How is the supply gathering going? Wang Chang instantly plastered a flattering smile across his face. He glared at Lin Fan. Mark my words. Back at the company I'll deal with you. I'll make sure you cannot even get a job waiting tables. Right, blacklist him across the whole industry, one of the men echoed. Carrying the wine, Wang Chang scurried towards Su Qingxue. Manager Su, look what I found. Romani Conti, perfect to calm your nerves. Lin Fan watched Wang Chang's fawning back and let out a cold huff. Calm your nerves? Drink it. Drink plenty. It will kill you faster. Lin Fan heaved the heavy case of water, his eyes fixed on the towering barren mountain behind the beach. A pale, gold prompt box hovered behind shrubbery halfway up the slope. Concealed rock cave, roughly 8 meters deep, a natural shelter. Its entrance is hidden by vines. The interior is dry and well ventilated. Relatively high safety rating. Ocean weather shifted as unpredictably as a person's mood. The sun blazed now, yet torrential rain could pour down at any moment. Lin Fan exhaled and strode toward the jumble of boulders. As he passed Su Qingshue's so-called temporary camp, jeers buzzed around him. Look, the intern is playing the fool on a hot day. Wang Chang sat cross-legged on a reef, swirling the priceless bottle of Romani Conti in his hand, watching Lin Fan like he was an idiot. Carrying junk up the mountain? You picked a nice spot. Building yourself a grave. Several male colleagues nearby were stacking looted luxury bags and watches into a pile. They burst into loud laughter. Chang, he's got big plans. What if the helicopter lands on the mountaintop? He's hauling water up there to curry favor with rescuers, hoping for a first-class seat. Ha ha ha. Born to be his servant, even on a deserted island. Zhao Na touched up her makeup using a broken mirror she had found. Though her face was bruised, she struggled to maintain her polished socialite demeanor. She wrinkled her nose in disgust at Lin Fan, soaked in sweat. You reek. Stay away. Don't stink up our Hermes bags. You could never afford to replace them. Lin Fan kept walking. There was no point arguing with people who were already as good as dead. He skirted the crowd and began tramping upward over loose stones. Suddenly hurried footsteps sounded behind him, along with a faint familiar fragrance. Lin Fan. Wait, hold on. Lin Fan halted and turned around. The sight before him made his breath catch slightly. It was Songya, an intern who had joined the company at the same time as him. Well, liked in the sales department. She looked disheveled from hardship. Her pencil skirt business dress had torn along one side, and fresh red scrapes marked her knees. Out of breath from running, her shirt was rumpled and damp with perspiration. Among this group of elites, She was one of the few who had treated Lin Fan decently. Back at the office, she would slip him milk tea during overtime and speak up for him when Wang Chong berated him. What do you want? Lin Fan's tone softened a little, carefully averting his gaze from her disheveled appearance. Songya reached him, hands braced on her knees as she gasped for air. She glanced back toward Wang Chong and the others still mocking them, then lowered her voice, eyes glistening. Lin Fan, stop carrying all that. Manager Su says rescuers will definitely come. You are wasting your energy, and everyone is laughing at you. In her mind, Lin Fan must have lost his wits from shock to act so strangely. Their laughter has nothing to do with whether I survive, Lin Fan said. He noted her sun, flushed cheeks. Don't be so optimistic. If no helicopter arrives tonight, find somewhere sheltered. Stay away from that crowd. Songya stared, surprised by how firm the usually reserved Lin Fan sounded. She bit her lip and opened her tightly clenched palm. An elegant lady's watch lay there, its face encrusted with sparkling diamonds. A Patek Philippe 24. Take this. She pushed the watch toward him. Lin Fan frowned. Why give this to me? Don't you understand? She leaned forward anxiously. When we get back, the company will go through major changes. Wang Chong will make your life miserable. She lifted her gaze. This watch is worth at least 300,000. Hide it. Sell it secretly once we return and move to another city. Don't stay and suffer in Shangtang. I hate seeing you bullied. So that was it. Fearing he would be persecuted after returning to civilization, she wanted to give him money to start over. Amid life or death uncertainty, this watch represented the greatest kindness she could offer, along with quiet, unspoken affection. Lin Fan looked at the watch in her hand. The golden prompt box popped up again. Patek Philippe 24, stainless, steel diamond, set quartz watch. Value in current environment, 0. Cannot be eaten. It only adds weight and burns extra calories. Of almost no practical use. Its hard glass face might work to focus sunlight to start a fire. 300,000. In civilized society, it stood for wealth, status, social privilege. Here, it was merely a hard piece of scrap metal, less useful than a pack of seeds. Lin Fan sighed inwardly. Songya was a good-hearted girl. But in this brutal place, kind-hearted people often died first, because their minds still clung to the rules of the old world. She needed to understand how cruel this place was. Words alone would not convince her. Only first-hand exposure to hardship might make her realize kindness offered no protection. Songya. Lin Fan refused to take the watch and met her eyes earnestly. Do you truly believe we will go home? Songya hesitated. But Manager Su said. Su Qingxue is human, not a god. Lin Fan cut her off coldly. Wake up. He snatched the expensive Patek Philippe from her open hand. Songya's face lit up, thinking he had finally listened to her. Her smile lasted only an instant. In one sharp motion, Lin Fan swung his arm. Whoosh. The diamond, encrusted luxury watch traced an arc through the air and plopped into the murky seawater more than 10 meters away. Songya's smile froze, her mouth falling open. Wang Chong and the others, who had been watching, gaped in shock. Holy hell, that's a Patek Philippe. This guy's lost his mind. 300,000 gone just like that. Crazy. He must have snapped under stress. That's real money. Angry shouts erupted. To them, Lin Fan had tossed away a dream they could never afford. Songya recovered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Lin Fan, why would you do that? I worked so hard. It is trash. Lin Fan interrupted her weeping, his voice hard. Here, it is not worth one bottle of water. Keeping it feeds your delusion of going back, and that delusion will get you killed. Seeing her tear-streaked face, he softened slightly. If you want to live, stop chasing trinkets. Look for food and drinking water instead. And stay far away from Wang Chong and his group. Without another word, Lin Fan hoisted the water case and strode uphill. Songya stood alone in the sea breeze, her skirt and thoughts both in disarray. Watching his retreating figure, a strange, unfamiliar feeling stirred inside her. This Lin Fan felt like a different person. Upon seeing the watch thrown away, several men sprinted toward the shoreline hoping to retrieve it. Halfway up the mountain, Lin Fan pushed thick vines aside. Cool damp air washed over him. It was a natural cave, narrow at the entrance, ideal for fending off wild animals. It functioned like a natural fortress. Inside, space opened up and the ground was relatively flat. Lin Fan carefully set down his water and cans deep within the cavern. This is not enough. Even with food, water, and shelter, danger lingered. He lacked something essential, a weapon. Fighting wild beasts or crueler human beings, unarmed meant certain death. Lin Fan stepped outside and activated his omniscient vision, scanning the wreckage scattered along the beach. Damaged life jacket, buoyancy lost. Useless garbage. Broken golf club, carbon fiber shaft. Could deliver blows, but not reliable for lethal defense. Broken champagne bottle, glass, fragile, single-use item. Box of condoms, marginally functional. He filtered through countless useless items. Then a faint blue glow flickered in a crevice between distant rocks. Diver's tactical thigh holster, wedged and rocked by ocean waves. It will be swept away by the next surge if not retrieved quickly. Contents: 1 SOG SEAL Team Tactical Fixed, blade knife HRC 58 hardness, sharp enough to cut metal, effective for defense, magnesium fire, starter rod, tactical flashlight 50% battery remaining. Lin Fan's heart raced. This was better than winning the lottery. Food and water were the baseline for survival. This knife meant the right to defend himself. With it, he could stand near the top of this island's food chain. He took a deep breath and scanned his surroundings. Wang Chong and the others were still combing the shore for the watch he had thrown. Lin Fan rushed down the slope. Reaching the reef, he stretched his arm into the deep crevice. His fingers brushed rough nylon fabric. He pulled hard and dragged out a heavy black tactical thigh holster. He did not open it immediately. Instead, he tucked it inside his clothing, secured it with his tattered vest, and picked up a few rotten planks, pretending to gather firewood as he slowly retreated toward the tree line. Once certain no one had seen him, he ducked behind a large tree and unzipped the holster with trembling hands. A matte, black dagger rested inside. Its long blade featured blood grooves and serrations along the spine. Lin Fan closed his hand around the grip. Zing! He drew the blade. Cold, sharp light glinted off the steel. He swung it casually. A branch as thick as a man's wrist snapped cleanly, sliced through with a smooth cut. An excellent blade. With this weapon, he could hold his own not only against Wang Chong and his men, but even against wild boars. The magnesium fire, starter rod was an unexpected bonus. Fire meant cooked food, warmth, and a barrier to drive off wild animals in the wilderness. He sheathed the dagger, tucked it securely at his waist under his shirt. For the rest of the morning, Lin Fan shuttled repeatedly between the beach and the cave. While others fought and looted, he kept carrying supplies. While others paraded their gold necklaces, he worked tirelessly. The sun hung high, scorching the beach with temperatures climbing close to 40 degrees Celsius by the afternoon. Gradually, the excitement on the beach faded. Thirst was setting in. Damn it, it's so hot. Wang Chong tore off his tie, licking his cracked lips. Burning thirst spread from his throat down into his stomach. He lifted his water bottle only to find it empty. The wine he had drunk earlier, far from quenching thirst, had dehydrated him further. His throat felt as though filled with sand. His eyes drifted involuntarily toward Lin Fan's figure, heading back toward the woods still in good condition. Water. Why haven't we found any water yet? Wang Chong kicked a male subordinate beside him in irritation. Are you idiots? This huge island, and you can't find a single drop of drinkable water? The subordinate, Zhang Tao, still wore the newly stolen green water ghost watch on his wrist. His face, however, was deathly pale. Chong, gee, there really isn't any. All we've got around here is seawater. Whatever fresh water there was has already been hauled away by that kid. Useless trash. Wang Chong snapped, scanning the beach with his eyes. Suddenly, his gaze locked onto the mountainside. Lin Fan was carrying the last case of mineral water into a limestone cave. Beneath the setting sun, those clear plastic bottles made Wang Chong's eyes burn with greed. Stop looking for it. It's right up there. Wang Chong pointed toward the mountainside and grinned maliciously. That kid has stockpiled tons of it. Go grab a few crates. Zhang Tao hesitated. But Lin Fan didn't look easy to deal with a moment ago. Not easy to deal with. Wang Chong slapped the back of Zhang Tao's head. He's just a low-level intern. Back at the company, my word was law. And it still is on this godforsaken island. I'm the supervisor. Allocating resources falls under my authority. He turned to another male colleague in glasses, Li Bin. You two go and tell him to carry the water down. Tell him it's for fair distribution among everyone. Ms. Su is watching down below. If he dares hoard supplies, I'll fire him the second we get back. Zhang Tao and Li Bin exchanged glances. Greed overcame their better judgment. They were parched, desperately thirsty. With Wang Chong backing their play, all their misgivings vanished. Let's go get the water. They steeled each other and stumbled uphill toward the mountainside. Lin Fan had just finished covering the cave entrance with camouflaging vines when he spotted the two unwanted visitors gasping for breath as they climbed up. He stared at them expressionlessly. Zhang Tao Sales Department. Severely dehydrated, 40% stamina remaining. Combat power, 0.5 goose. Inner thought. Drink up all his water and steal his luncheon meat too. Li Bin Human Resources Department. Severely dehydrated, mild heat stroke. Combat power, zero point 0.3 goose. Inner thought. This guy is usually meek. Intimidation ought to work on him. Their combat power added up to less than that of a single goose. Total pushovers. Lin Fan let out a cold laugh. Lin Fan. Zhang Tao planted his hands on his hips, trying hard to maintain the senior, colleague air he used at work. Chang, Ji says bring the water down here. Everyone is dying of thirst. How can you hoard all these supplies for yourself? Have you no sense of collective responsibility? Adjusting his glasses, Li Bin chimed in with sarcasm. Exactly. Ms. Su is watching from the beach. What you're doing is utterly selfish. Hand the water over and Chang. Ji might even put in a good word for you in front of Ms. Su. If they were still in civilized society, Lin Fan might have played along. Right now, he could not even be bothered to spare them a proper glance. Get lost. Both men froze. Lin Fan, the intern who always obeyed every order to fetch tea and run errands at the office, had just told them to get lost. What did you say? Zhang Tao's pride stung. He stepped forward aggressively. Lin Fan, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Do you believe I can get you blacklisted across the whole industry once we're rescued? There is no Chang, Ji here, and no company either. Lin Fan's eyes turned icy cold. Want drinking water? Go find it yourselves. Take one more step forward, and I'll break your legs. Zhang Tao flinched under his stare. Then he reminded himself there were two of them against one scrawny intern. What was there to fear? You refuse a kind offer and force me to use harsh means. I'll take it myself. Zhang Tao shot Li Bin a signal. The two moved in from either side, reaching out to shove Lin Fan, intending to force their way into the cave and seize the water. Lin Fan stood perfectly still. The instant Zhang Tao's hand was about to touch his shoulder, Lin Fan lifted his leg. Bang! The kick landed solidly in Zhang Tao's abdomen, full, force, and unforgiving. Aha! Zhang Tao let out a blood-curdling scream. He tumbled down the slope, rolling 7 or 8 meters before slamming into a tree. Clutching his stomach, he retched violently, nearly throwing up bile. Li Bin was petrified. His raised hands hung suspended midair, unsure whether to advance or run. Want a taste of this too? Lin Fan asked coldly. Li Bin yelped and scrambled headlong downhill. Down on the beach, Wang Chang had been boasting to several female colleagues about his past achievements, his eyes wandering over the women. When he saw the two men return in total disarray, his smile vanished. What happened? Where's the water? Chang Ji, that kid Lin Fan has gone crazy. Li Bin panted, pointing uphill with a miserable look. He wouldn't give us any. He attacked us. Zhang Tao got kicked and hurt badly. Zhang Tao, who had limped back, exaggerated his injuries, clutching his stomach and moaning. Chang Ji, he said you mean nothing to him. He swore he would rather pour the water away than let you drink a single drop. He's rebelling. Absolutely insubordinate. Wang Chang shook with rage. The doormat intern he had always pushed around had dared stand up against him. If he could not subdue one intern right now, how would he lead the rest of the group later? Su Qingxue was watching nearby. Losing face here would ruin any chance he had for promotion after rescue. Damn this ungrateful brat. Wang Chang picked up a thick wooden stick from the ground and brandished it fiercely. All the men, follow me. I want to see how brave he really is. We are getting that water back today, no matter what. Several onlooking male colleagues grew eager. They hoped to impress their supervisor and were also suffering terrible thirst. The group charged furiously up the rocky slope. Supervisor Wang, you must not do this. A young woman rushed forward, blocking the only path up the mountainside. It was Sanya. She spread her arms, eyes reddened with anxiety. Lin Fan worked hard to gather those supplies. You have no right to rob him. Ms. Su said we ought to work together to find solutions, not turn on each other. Get out of my way. Wang Chang was blinded by fury. He roughly shoved Sanya down onto the sand. I'll deal with you later once we get the water. Not far away, Su Qingxue frowned. She wanted to intervene, but her parched throat would not let her speak loudly. Deep down, she also felt a flicker of disapproval toward Lin Fan. Even under these extraordinary circumstances, hoarding fresh water was unreasonable. Letting Wang Chang teach him a lesson might be for the best, as long as nobody got killed. Ms. Su, it seems your company's management leaves quite a bit to be desired. He will be fired once we return. Su Qingxue replied coldly. Up on the mountainside, Lin Fan watched the 5 or 6 men storming toward him. Instead of hiding, he pulled a magnesium fire starter from his tactical leg pouch and wiped it casually against his clothing. Wang Chang reached Lin Fan, stopping 3 meters away. He pointed the stick straight at Lin Fan's nose, spittle flying. Lin Fan, you think you are untouchable now? You dare assault a co-worker and hoard company supplies. Severe dehydration and rage twisted Wang Chang's features. I order you right now. Hand over the water immediately. Then kneel and apologize to Zhang Tao. Do not force me to discard all previous consideration. Lin Fan paused what he was doing and lifted his gaze. Wang Chong, sales supervisor. Maximum anger. 50 intelligence. Severe dehydration has destroyed his judgment. His rotten wooden stick is extremely brittle and will shatter under force. Threat level. Garbage among trash. And what if I refuse? Refuse. Wang Chong laughed in fury and shouted to the men behind him. Everyone heard that. He brought this on himself. Get him. Seize the water. I take full responsibility for whatever happens. The second his words ended, he swung the heavy stick hard, aiming straight for Lin Fan's head. The wind whistled. A solid hit would have cracked his skull open. Songya, still on the ground, screamed in alarm. Lin Fan, look out! Lin Fan did not flinch. At the very last instant, he leaned sideways. The decayed wooden stick crashed against a boulder with a sharp crack and snapped clean in two. Wang Chong could not check his momentum and stumbled forward. Before he could regain balance, Lin Fan's hand clamped tight around his throat. Then zing! A tactical knife pressed against Wang Chong's carotid artery. The blade bit into skin, tiny beads of blood welling along its serrated edge. Wang Chong's Adam's apple bobbed wildly. His eyes bulged almost out of their sockets. All his shouting died in his throat. He could feel the bitter cold of steel and the sharp stinging on his neck. One small twitch of Lin Fan's wrist, and his artery would rupture. The men charging behind froze mid-stride, faces drained of color. Stones and wooden clubs slipped from their hands and clattered onto rock. A knife. A real knife. If someone got killed, none of them would escape legal punishment back on the mainland. Rob me? Lin Fan stared into Wang Chong's contorted face. Wang Chong, you just said you would take responsibility for whatever happens. Wang Chong trembled uncontrollably. Warm urine soaked his trousers and dripped onto the stone beneath him. Lin Fan, murder is against the law. He whimpered, snot and tears streaking his face. All trace of arrogance gone. Let's talk this over. Don't do anything reckless. The law. Lin Fan pressed the blade a fraction deeper. Wang Chong let out a shrill whimper. Ah, stop. Open your eyes and see clearly. Lin Fan leaned close to his ear, his voice altered. Powerful men in high places can be reasoned with, but petty bullies are trouble. On this desolate island, this blade is the law. That scene shattered the civilized illusions of everyone watching down on the beach. Su Qingxue stood up, utterly stunned. The quiet, hard, working intern from the office, now holding a knife with a supervisor cowering beneath him, filled her with genuine dread. Would he really kill someone? Get out of here. Lin Fan suddenly let go and kicked Wang Chong backward. Wang Chong scrambled back toward the others, clutching the shallow cut on his neck and gasping for air. Lin Fan sheathed his knife. He looked down over the crowd, his gaze settling finally on Su Qingxue. Their eyes met. The usually aloof female executive felt a jolt of fear and involuntarily looked away. The sun continued sinking, yet the heat showed no sign of easing. Su Qingxue sat in the shade of a reef, licking her cracked, peeling lips. Her throat burned as though filled with ground glass. She glanced at her satellite phone. Its screen remained dead black. According to her estimate, rescue was still a few hours away, but her body was already nearing its breaking point. Su Qingxue, president of Shengtang Group. Severe dehydration with mild heat stroke. 20% stamina remaining. Inner thought, I cannot give up. I must obtain water, or I will not survive until the rescue team arrives. Lin Fan sat in the cool shade of the cave entrance, twirling his tactical knife. His all-knowing status prompt fed him full information about the group below. Su Qingxue braced herself against the rock and stood. She brushed sand from her damp, white one-piece swimsuit and began climbing the mountainside. Wang Chong scurried toward her. Miss Su, don't go up there. It's dangerous. That man has lost his mind. He really carries a blade. Be quiet. Su Qingxue replied hoarsely, ignoring him completely. She climbed over jagged hot stones bare-footed, her high heels having been lost in the tsunami. Every step brought sharp pain, yet she bit her lip and made no sound. Reaching the cave entrance, she halted. Lin Fan sat on an upturned plastic crate. 2 bottles of mineral water rested beside his feet. He slowly chewed a slice of canned luncheon meat. The aroma of meat and the faint cool scent of fresh water drifted over on the breeze. Su Qingxue's throat bobbed as she swallowed dryly. Her gaze locked onto the water bottles. Lin Fan. She spoke, striving to maintain her usual cool executive tone. Give me 1 bottle of water. Lin Fan swallowed his food and glanced up. Why should I? Su Qingxue frowned. At Shengtang Group, her orders never required justification. 100,000, she offered directly. Once the rescue team arrives tonight, the finance department will transfer the sum straight to your bank account. That equals your full year's intern salary. Lin Fan chuckled. Without answering, he picked up one bottle, twisted off its cap. Water glistened brightly in the sunlight. Su Qingshue's breathing quickened. Lin Fan tilted his head back and drank deeply. The sound of swallowing carried clearly across the quiet mountainside. Down on the beach, Wang Chong and the others stared, their throats working fruitlessly. When he finished, Lin Fan screwed the cap tightly back on, not wasting a single drop, and set the bottle down. 200,000. Su Qingxue drew a shaky breath, her chest rising and falling. And I will arrange for you to leave the island on the first evacuation flight with me. Lin Fan barely lifted an eyelid. Seeing his indifference, Su Qingxue grew impatient. Lin Fan, do not push your luck. Once the helicopters arrive tonight, your water will be worthless. Trading it for 200,000 and your safety is the best deal you will ever get. Lin Fan bit into another piece of luncheon meat, still not looking up. 500,000. Su Qingxue raised her bid, her voice rough with thirst. 500,000 for 2 bottles of water. Enough for a full down payment on an apartment in Jiangqing. This is my final offer. Status update. Elevated heart rate, low blood sugar. Negotiating through sheer force of will. Lin Fan stopped eating. He stood and walked over to Su Qingxue. They stood less than half a meter apart. He could see her bleeding chapped lips and the hollow cheeks brought on by dehydration. Ms. Su. He looked down at her. Do you truly believe money can buy absolutely anything? That is common sense. Su Qingxue lifted her chin and met his stare. That is the common sense of civilized society. Lin Fan gestured toward the ocean, then toward the dense jungle behind them. Out here, your money is not even good enough for toilet paper. 500,000. Even if you signed over all your shares in Shengtang Group, you would not get 1 drop of my water today. Su Qingxue froze. In Lin Fan's eyes, she saw unyielding coldness. This was not hard bargaining. He genuinely did not care about her wealth. What exactly do you want? Su Qingxue ground her teeth. I want you to accept reality. Lin Fan returned to sit by the cave. This is a deserted island, not your executive office. If you want water, fine. Trade for it with useful survival supplies. If you have no supplies, work for it. Gather seaweed along the shore, collect dry firewood from the woods. Do not come to me with empty promises. Su Qingxue paled. Collect seaweed? Gather firewood? As the multi-billion-dollar president of Shengtang Group, she had never done menial labor like that in her life. You will regret this, Lin Fan. She stared hard at him and prepared to head back downhill. Brother Lin Fan. Before she could move, another breathless female voice called from below. Lu Feifei climbed upward. She was in even worse shape. Her thin blouse was torn open by shrubbery. Deep scratches marked her pale thighs, and she limped badly. Yet she still tried to preserve the poise of a famous celebrity. Lu Feifei, a list actress. Severe dehydration, stamina nearly exhausted. Combat power, 0.1 goose. Inner thought, I will offer something of mine to get water. Once we are rescued, none of this matters. Lu Feifei walked up to Lin Fan and brushed her disheveled hair back, putting on her most pitiful, appealing expression. Lin Fan, brother Lin, her eyes glistened. Please give me some water. I am so thirsty I cannot go on. Lin Fan watched her, completely unmoved. Lu Feifei gritted her teeth and leaned forward slightly. If you give me a bottle of water, she said earnestly. Once we return to land, I will give you my private contact information. Wealthy tycoons spend millions just for a meal with me. I will agree to have dinner alone with you and grant you one reasonable wish. Opportunities like this are something ordinary people can only dream of. Standing nearby, Su Qingxue frowned. The well-known pure image celebrity was willing to bargain for water by offering personal favors. Lin Fan looked at Lu Feifei. She possessed striking looks and a great figure. Under normal circumstances, most men would have been swayed. But Lin Fan's mind remained perfectly clear. He let out a cold laugh and glanced her up and down frankly. I have no interest in the persona manufactured for you by capital, Lin Fan stated plainly, each word cutting deep. Also, you overestimate your own worth. He pointed with the sheath of his knife toward her soft, scratched hands. You cannot crack open a coconut. You cannot catch fish. On this island, you contribute nothing and only consume limited resources. Why would I trade precious water for a dinner with you? It would be a terrible bargain for me. Lu Feifei's face flushed alternately red and white, burning with humiliation. Her fame and public appeal meant absolutely nothing to this ordinary intern. Watching Lin Fan's stern profile, Su Qingxue felt profound defeat. She began to understand he was right. On this island, all their former status, wealth and social prestige had been wiped clean. If you want water, you already know my rule, Lin Fan said, turning away from both women and stepping deeper into the cave. Bring me dry firewood in exchange. Su Qingxue and Lu Feifei stood rooted to the spot, their faces flushing and paling in turn. Su Qingxue, in particular, had lived with immense pride for over 2 decades. Possessing $1 billion fortune, she had always had men fawn over her, bending over backwards to win her favor. Yet today, she had set aside her status as a CEO to speak first, even offering an enormous sum of money, only for a low, ranking in turn to trample all over her dignity without the slightest mercy. She completely lost her composure. Very well, Lin Fan, you've got guts. Su Qingxue bit hard into her chapped lips. Clinging stubbornly to her last shred of arrogance, she ground out each word. Wait until the helicopter arrives tonight. Then we'll see how cocky you can be. Lu Feifei glared at him with venom. If looks could kill, Lin Fan would have been cut to pieces long ago. Holding her son, reddened chest, she followed behind Su Qingxue, spitting insults under her breath. What a nobody. Once we get back to the mainland, I'll make sure to blacklist this worthless loser. Lin Fan did not spare them so much as a glance. Su Qingxue, rage 80%, fear 60%, sustaining her pride by draining her last reserves of physical strength. Suggestion, ignore her. She will break down in tears once night falls. Lu Feifei, resentment 90%, extreme thirst, mentally plotting to fabricate lies to have you imprisoned. Suggestion, beware of her false accusations, though she has no influence here for now. Lin Fan looked away and turned back toward the cave to enjoy his kin luncheon meat. Down on the beach, the temperature was pushing 42 degrees Celsius. Wang Chong and the others huddled in the shade of a massive boulder, the only spot on the beach offering both shelter and coolness. Every one of them was parched, their eyes glazed with thirst. A collective groan rose from the group when they saw Su Qingxue and Lu Feifei return empty-handed. Ms. Su, even you couldn't persuade him? Wang Chong asked in disbelief. Su Qingxue walked to the center of the shaded area. Wang Chong immediately kicked a male subordinate aside to make room for her in the best spot. Su Qingxue sat down and stared at her dead, black satellite phone. Save your strength. The sun will set soon. Keep quiet and hold on until midnight. Helicopters. Rescue teams. Those words injected a fresh burst of hope into the group. Yes, they would be rescued tonight. Once back in civilization, they would return to their privileged lives. And Lin Fan would remain nothing more than a low-level intern. A dozen meters away from the main group, beside a sand dune, Song Ye's face had turned deathly pale. She had stood up for Lin Fan earlier and been shoved hard by Wang Chong. He ordered everyone to shun her, forbidding her from approaching the shade beneath the boulder. Thud. A dull sound echoed near the jumble of rocks. Lin Fan glanced over. Songya had collapsed onto the scorching sand. Overexposure to the blazing sun combined with severe dehydration had left her completely incapacitated. She curled into a ball, her face flushed an unnatural shade of red, breathing fast and shallow. Several male colleagues nearby exchanged uneasy glances, yet none dared step forward to help. Huddled in the shade, Wang Chong jeered sarcastically. Pretending to pass out? Weren't you so brave a little while ago? Human nature revealed its cold cruelty. Lin Fan frowned. A golden system prompt flickered above Songya's head. Severe heat stroke. Core body temperature exceeds 40 degrees Celsius. Accompanied by dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Without immediate cooling and rehydration, multiple organ failure will occur within 30 minutes, with a fatality rate of 90%. Note, this young woman took a blow meant for you and has endured unrelenting sunlight ever since. Lin Fan rushed over to Songya's side. He touched her forehead. It burned like a furnace. He then lifted her into his arms. She was light. Though she had a healthy build, her bones were delicate. Her popped white blouse was soaked through with sweat and clung tightly to her skin. Though his arm brushed against her body, Lin Fan's mind was fixed firmly on the system's ticking countdown. Time remaining until organ failure, 28 minutes. Holding her, Lin Fan strode quickly toward the hillside cave. Hey everyone, look who's here, taking advantage of the situation. Wang Chong shouted from below. Lin Fan, you're taking advantage of her condition. I'll call the police the second we get back. Lin Fan ignored the taunts and stepped into the cave. Cool air wrapped around him at once. The temperature inside was at least 10 degrees lower than outside. He laid Songya flat on a smooth rock surface. First, A protocol, physical cooling. Remove restrictive clothing and ensure ventilation. Administer water in small, frequent sips. Lin Fan acted without hesitation. He tore off her restrictive business skirt, followed by her sweat-soaked blouse. Rip. The sound of tearing fabric echoed sharply inside the cave. Soon Songya was left only in her undergarments. Her skin, flushed pink from high fever, rose and fell rapidly with each labored breath. Lin Fan picked up a bottle of mineral water. He took a large mouthful, pried open Songya's jaw, and fed her the water mouth to mouth. Unconscious, she could not drink on her own. One mouthful, then another. Cool water slid down her throat, and the painful frown on Songya's face softened slightly. He poured the rest of the water into his palms and patted it onto her forehead, neck arteries, and armpits. After more than 10 minutes of work, the system prompt updated. Status update. Body temperature dropping. Dehydration alleviated. Consciousness about to return. Lin Fan let out a breath of relief, sat down heavily beside her, and bit into his unfinished canned luncheon meat. A soft moan escaped the woman lying on the rock. Songya slowly opened her eyes. Her vision cleared, and the first thing she saw was the hanging stalactites. Then Lin Fan's profile as he chewed his food. Memories flooded back. The capsized cruise ship, the tsunami, Wang Chong's shove. Lin Fan. Songya tried to sit up, only to feel a cold chill across her body. She looked down and let out a short cry of surprise, quickly covering herself. You're awake? Drink some water if you can. Lin Fan tossed her the half-empty bottle, his tone somewhat gentler than before. Take it slow. Don't choke. Songya caught the bottle, her face burning bright red, glancing at the torn clothing scattered on the ground. Then at Lin Fan's unperturbed expression, she understood. Out here on this desolate island, no one but Lin Fan would have bothered to save her life after she collapsed from heat stroke. The clothes had been removed to bring down her fever. Thank you, she whispered. She unscrewed the cap and sipped carefully, soothing her parched throat. After drinking some water, her mind grew clearer. She stared at Lin Fan's silent profile and bit her lip before speaking. Lin Fan, you really shouldn't have offended Ms. Su so badly back there. Lin Fan paused and turned toward her. What are you getting at? She is still our CEO after all. Songya's voice was soft. Once the rescue helicopter arrives tonight, she will definitely decide who boards first. You held Supervisor Wang at knife point and humiliated her in front of everyone. What if they gang up and leave you stranded on this island when help comes? Silence fell over the cave, broken only by the wind. Lin Fan slammed his luncheon, meatkin down against the stone, his gaze turning icy. Songya flinched. Did I say something wrong? Lin Fan grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the cave entrance. Lin Fan, what are you doing? Songya struggled. Be quiet and look at the sky. Lin Fan held her by the shoulders, forcing her gaze toward the distant horizon. The sun had sunk completely below the ocean. Yet instead of fading into normal night, the sky twisted into something strange and uncanny. Songya stared in bewilderment. What kind of clouds are those? That is geomagnetic anomaly. The magnetic field across this stretch of ocean is completely chaotic. Compasses spin uselessly, and radio signals fail entirely. That fancy satellite phone Su Qingxue clutches is nothing more than a useless hunk of metal ever since the ship sank. Songya froze, her voice trembling uncontrollably. You mean? Yes. Lin Fan let go of her, shattering her illusions about corporate hierarchies. This place does not lie along any known shipping route. There is no satellite positioning. The helicopter will never come. We are not going home. Magnetic field disturbance? That can't possibly be true. Songya stumbled backward, clutching herself. Ms. Su's is atop of the line satellite phone. It's supposed to work anywhere on Earth, even in remote wilderness. Works anywhere on Earth? It's a shame you don't think things through. Lin Fan let out a scoff. Do you know why a 10,000-ton cruise liner veered off course without warning? Do you know why a 100-meter tsunami struck with zero meteorological warning? Songya fell silent, unable to come up with a single counter-argument. Because this landmass does not appear on any human-made satellite map. Lin Fan walked to the cave mouth and pointed toward the strange glow on the horizon. Look closely. Which direction did the sun set? Is that true west? The geomagnetism here is completely broken. Compasses spin like fans. How could you possibly expect satellite reception? Songya followed his pointing finger. Dread washed over her. This was no beautiful sunset. The sky resembled rotting purplish, red flesh. Oppressive beyond anything she had ever experienced. No shipping lanes. Only waves beating endlessly against the wreckage of the cruise ship. The workplace rules and civilized norms she had always trusted crumbled completely. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She slid down the rock wall onto the stone ground, her voice shaking. So we can't go back. Are we really going to die here? Quiet. Crying won't solve anything. If tears could help, go cry by the sea and make a freshwater lake. Lin Fan pulled his dagger from his waist and picked up a hardwood branch as thick as an arm at the cave entrance. The blade flashed. Swish, swish. Wood shavings flew. In less than 3 minutes, he had carved a sharp, deadly point. Take this. Lin Fan tossed the sharpened wooden spear at Song Ye's feet. Song Ye shuddered, staring at the sharp tip. She trembled, too afraid to touch it. It is roughly 5 in the afternoon. Lin Fan glanced at her waterproof electronic watch. Strong magnetic interference made its numbers jump erratically, but full darkness would fall in no more than 3 hours. Down on the beach, those fools are still daydreaming about being rescued by helicopter. Past midnight, crippling thirst and utter despair will turn them savage. When that happens, your vulnerability will make you a prime target for them. Song Ye's face drained of color. She bit her lip hard. I'm going out to scavenge supplies. You stay here and guard the cave. Lin Fan slid his knife back into its sheath. If anyone approaches, grip this spear tightly. Aim for their neck or abdomen. Drive it home hard and twist. Stab someone? Song Ye shook her head violently, terror in her eyes. I can't do that. Killing people is against the law. Then wait for them to overpower you, in exchange for a sip of water. Set aside your urge to be kind. Respect the reality of our situation. This is a desert island. No laws apply here, only life and death. If you insist on playing the saint, you will be the one who suffers. The choice is yours. With those words, Lin Fan left Song Ye frozen in place and stepped back out into the sweltering heat. Lin Fan quickly circled toward the far side of the coastline, deliberately avoiding the main beach, where the others had rummaged over every inch of ground. Golden glows from his omniscient vision system flickered constantly across shipwreck debris in his field of view. Lin Fan filtered out irrelevant information. Suddenly, 200 meters ahead, in the shallow water reef zone, a brilliant golden light shone through the seawater. Waterproof sealed storage box tangled in seaweed. Premium storage container from the cruise ship galley. Latch deformed, but sealing remains intact. Contents: 10 bags of air, dried beef strips high. Calorie rations, 3 bars of high purity dark chocolate. 1 medical first aid kit contains antibiotics, iodophor, bandages, 1 tactical folding entrenching tool. What a huge windfall. In this barren wasteland, these high-calorie foods were life-saving treasures. The first aid kit was even more valuable. On this island, even a small scratch could turn fatal, making antibiotics worth more than gold. And the multi-purpose entrenching tool was an invaluable wilderness survival asset. Lin Fan crouched low and hurried forward along the rock face. As he rounded a large reef, he glanced down toward the survivors' camp. Those former high-status professionals were putting on a grotesque, tragic show. Su Qingxue sat alone in the deepest part of the shade. Her white one-piece swimsuit had dried but was covered in sand, leaving her looking utterly disheveled. She held her dead satellite phone in both hands. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, and she fought against raging thirst. Time and again, her eyes drifted involuntarily toward the halfway-up cave on the hillside. There was fresh drinking water up there, and the tempting smell of meat. All she needed to do was gather some seaweed and dry firewood in exchange for supplies. No, never. Su Qingxue clenched her fists hard. As the powerful CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, she would never bow to a low-level intern. Midnight. Once rescue arrived at midnight, Lin Fan would beg on his knees before her. Some distance away, the famous star Lu Feifei had lost all her glamorous poise. She lay listlessly on the sand, her eyes vacant. Meanwhile, Wang Chong and several male co-workers hovered around scattered luxury handbags and Rolex watches. Supervisor Wang, I think I'm dying. Zhang Tao's eye sockets were sunken. Go die somewhere else if you're going to. Wang Chong tore off his tie in rage and slapped Li Bin hard across the face. Damn it, did you steal my water just now? Li Bin was dazed from the blow but lacked the strength to fight back. He merely licked his peeling, parched lips instinctively. Lin Fan watched the scene, undisguised mockery in his eyes. Once midnight brought cold winds, those arrogant fools would learn that their social status bought them nothing here, not even a raw crab. He moved on without lingering. When he reached the location, he used his tactical knife to cut through the seaweed, then heaved with all his strength. Splash! The heavy box was dragged out of the water and slammed onto the rocks. Lin Fan struck the deformed latch hard with the hilt of his knife. Click! The lid popped open. The waterproof rubber seal had resisted seawater perfectly. Every item inside remained dry. He tore open a bar of dark chocolate and broke off half, popping it into his mouth. Rich, Bitter flavor spread across his tongue. As he chewed, high energy sugar flooded his stomach. His fatigued muscles regained their strength. This was the power of true survival currency. Lin Fan stowed the beef strips and chocolate close to his body and clipped the first aid kit to his tactical belt. Finally, he grasped the heavy manganese, steel entrenching tool. Tactical folding entrenching tool. Well, balanced weight. Extremely powerful for chopping. Suitable for digging shelters and cutting wood. Its sharp blade delivers devastating striking force. Lin Fan held the entrenching tool in one hand, flicked his wrist, and brought the sharp manganese steel edge down onto a fallen dead tree trunk beside him. Crack. The 10-centimeter, thick dry wood snapped clean in two with a smooth cut. This tool was far more effective than an ordinary machete. System prompts flickered in his vision. Dry camphor branches, dense, high-quality tinder. Burns long, lasting with minimal smoke and repels insects. Lin Fan bent down to gather the wood. He noticed a shift in temperature. Though a sliver of sun still hovered above the horizon, strange purplish, red aurora spread across the sky. The oppressive heat of the sea breeze faded rapidly. Temperature shifts on this island were brutal. The air cooled steadily, and damp frigid wind cut into his bones. Lin Fan worked faster. The entrenching tool flashed as he chopped the camphor wood into manageable pieces. He bundled them with a torn fishing net and slung the load over his shoulder. Down on the beach, the dying sun painted everything blood red. Leaning on a broken branch, Wang Chong staggered to his feet. His lips were crusted with dark, dried blood. Every breath felt like swallowing shards of glass. Though some daytime warmth lingered, crippling dehydration pushed the men toward madness. Thirst overwhelmed rational thought. I can't take it anymore. Wang Chong scanned his surroundings. The boulder shade they had fought over was no longer enough. Once full night fell and temperatures plummeted, they would not survive without water. Stop lying there, all of you. Get up. Wang Chong kicked Zhang Tao hard in the lower back, shouting hoarsely. Hurry while there is still light. Look for water. There must be coconuts at the edge of the woods. The instinct to survive roused the exhausted men. They dragged themselves up from the sand. Ignoring Su Qingxue, they stumbled toward the coconut grove dozens of meters away. The edge of the woods. Beneath several gnarled coconut trees, 7 or 8 coconuts lay scattered across the ground. Water. Chong. Coconuts. Zhang Tao's voice cracked with excitement. He scrambled forward and threw his arms around a coconut bigger than his own head. The other men's eyes blazed. They lunged like starved predators, each snatching one for himself. Yet their moment of joy lasted barely 3 seconds. The thick, fibrous husk of each coconut was nearly impenetrable, shielding the hard shell underneath. These former elites had not a single piece of metal among them. They had no way to crack them open. Use rocks. Smash them open. Wang Chong's eyes burned red. He hefted a coconut and slammed it furiously against the jagged reefs nearby. Bang! Bang! The noise was loud. Outer fibers shredded, exposing matted strands. Yet the inner hard shell did not bear even the faintest scratch. Frustration burned in Zhang Tao's eyes. He lifted a rock the size of a watermelon and hammered wildly at the coconut on the sand. But his limbs trembled from exhaustion. The rock slipped, crashing hard against his wrist. Crack! His Rolex Submariner, salvaged from the wreckage, shattered on the spot. Its bracelet snapped, and pieces flew into the nearby undergrowth. Zhang Tao only froze for half a second. He paid no mind to the $100,000 watch and went back to heaving rocks at the coconut. A 300,000 yuan watch bought him not a single sip of water. Lin Fan's earlier prediction about them ending up scavenging trash struck these foolish men dead on. They smashed away for more than 10 minutes. All 5 collapsed onto the sand. Physical exhaustion combined with severe dehydration made spots dance before their eyes. It's cracked. Mine split open. Li Bin howled. His coconut had finally yielded a narrow crack under repeated blows from stone. Wang Chong threw himself forward, shoved Li Bin roughly aside, pressed his mouth straight to the fissure, and sucked hard. Murky fluid surged down his throat. The next instant, Wang Chong's face turned an ugly purplish green. His eyes bulged. Ugh! He spun around and vomited violently, expelling everything he had drunk along with stomach acid across the sand. He knelt on the beach, coughing so hard his lungs ached. A revolting stench filled the air, as if 100 dead fish had rotted inside a sewer for months. Zhang Tao inched cautiously toward the broken coconut. Dread washed over him. This was no coconut water. Inside swirled thick, dark, brown slime. Countless tiny white wriggling larvae writhed within the muck. A fist-sized coconut crab covered in bristles and sharp spines began clambering out through the crack, waving its pincers menacingly. This coconut had fallen months earlier and decomposed into a biological hazard. Ugh! Li Bin caught the overpowering reek, his stomach convulsing, and threw up beside Wang Chong. Damn you, Li Bin. Did you do this on purpose to poison me? Wang Chong retched helplessly, pounding the sand with his fists. The foul taste coated his mouth, draining what little strength he had left. No fresh water, and they had burned through the last of their stamina. Cold wind bit into them. Once powerful men of high society now lay sprawled on the sand like stray dogs beside the rotten, toxic coconut. Halfway up the mountainside, at the mouth of a cave, Lin Fan brushed aside concealing vines. Don't come any closer. Songya screamed from the darkness, her voice trembling. She gripped a sharpened wooden stake, her hands shaking uncontrollably, pointing it blindly toward the cave entrance. Her tattered shirt barely covered her body. It's me. Lin Fan set down his fishing net. Camphor, wood logs clanged heavily against rock. At the familiar, emotionless tone, Songya sagged in relief. Clink. The wooden stake clattered onto stone. She slumped against a boulder, eyes glistening with tears, biting her lip hard to hold back sobs, terrified of angering this dangerous man. Lin Fan placed his sealed container down and pulled high calorie rations from inside his shirt onto the rock beside him. Night had fully fallen. Temperatures inside the cave plummeted. Songya shivered violently, her teeth chattering. Lin Fan drew his tactical knife and moved quickly. He chopped the camphor wood into thin kindling and stacked them in a crossfire pit on flat stone. He pulled a magnesium fire starter from his leg pouch, pressed the knife back hard against it, and drew it firmly. Screech. Bright sparks burst in the dark, landing precisely on dried seagrass tinder. Thin wispy smoke rose. Lin Fan leaned forward and blew steadily. Whoosh. Flames ignited, racing up the kindling and catching the larger camphor wood base. The fire blazed bright. Golden light tore through the darkness, driving back the cave's damp, bitter chill. Fire meant civilization. It meant safety. Songya stared mesmerized at the dancing flames. In this forsaken place, fire was absolute authority. She edged closer, stretching out her frozen hands. Warmth washed over her, easing some of her terror. Inside the cave halfway up the slope, firelight flickered. Orange flames chased away damp cold, warming the stone walls. Lin Fan sat cross-legged beside the fire. He took out his tactical blade and sliced a can of processed meat down the middle. He skewered it on a sharpened stick and held it over the flames, turning it slowly. Grease bubbled and sizzled over the heat. Rich meat aroma mixed with the sharp scent of burning camphor drifted out on the cool night breeze. Wrapped in her ragged shirt, Songya clutched her clothing tightly, staring fixedly at the roasting meat. Her throat bobbed repeatedly. After drinking half a bottle of water, her dehydration had eased and her body warmed slightly. But hunger now gnawed fiercely at her, amplified by the tantalizing smell of cooking food. Lin Fan peered out through sparse vines covering the cave opening toward the beach far below. Temperature monitoring. Current ambient temperature 14 degrees Celsius. Expected to drop below 10 degrees Celsius within 2 hours. Combined with force, 4C winds, wind, chill will approach 5 degrees Celsius. Target group status analysis. Severe thirst and hunger, mild hypothermia. Their mental defenses are crumbling, triggered by the scent of roasted meat. Lin Fan let out a cold laugh. Tonight's island welcome feast would be more than these former connoisseurs of fine wine and steak could endure. Beneath the rotting coconut trees along the beach, all lay shrouded in darkness. Zhang Tao crawled on all fours, scrabbling frantically across gritty sand and decaying plant matter. The area around Wang Chong's vomiting spot reeked horribly. Driven by survival instinct, Zhang Tao had dragged himself more than 10 meters deeper into the tree line. Suddenly his fingers brushed a large round object covered in rough, fibrous husk. He froze and clutched it tightly to his chest. The weight felt different. The rotten coconut had been light, but this one was heavy. When he shook it, clear sloshing liquid echoed inside. A good, intact coconut. Wild hope lit his eyes. His heart hammered. He grabbed a sharp shard of rock from the ground, wedged the coconut between his thighs, and struck relentlessly at its softer upper end. Thud, thud, thud. Rough husk skin tore his hands open. Blood mixed with sand coated the shell. At last came a faint crack. A hole no bigger than a coin split the coconut shell. Sweet, smelling sap seeped out. Zhang Tao caught the life, giving scent. He leaned forward, his cracked, bleeding lips nearly touching the opening. When his lips were merely 2 centimeters away from the crack, tremendous force slammed into his lower back from behind. Crunch. A leather boot kicked him hard. Already drained of strength, Zhang Tao was sent sprawling face first into sharp gravel, filling his mouth with grit and blood. Wang Chong snatched the fallen coconut. You think you get to keep fines all to yourself? You know how things work at Shangtang, he snarled in a lowered voice. He raised the coconut, staring greedily at the leaking opening, gasping heavily. Thirst burned inside him. Ignoring hierarchy, he pressed the crack straight to his mouth and drank greedily. Cool, sweet coconut water flooded his parched throat, reviving his dehydrated body. A wave of relief washed over him, drawing a low groan from his throat. He gulped down nearly a quarter of the coconut's contents. Sobriety returned quickly. He pulled the coconut away, wiped juice from his mouth with his sleeve, and even rubbed sand over his lips to pretend he still suffered terrible thirst. Bleeding from the fall, Zhang Tao staggered to his feet, eyes locked desperately on the coconut in Wang Chong's hands. Chong, save me some. I smashed it open with my bare hands. Just one sip. His voice shook, his knees buckling as he nearly knelt. Shut up. Wang Chong kicked him hard on the shin, warning fiercely. I found this coconut. It has nothing to do with you. One more word, and you will regret it back at the company. With that, Wang Chong hurried back toward the rest of the group sheltered beside rock formations. Zhang Tao sank onto the sand, staring at his retreating figure. Helpless tears streamed down his face. Near the rock shelter, Su Qingxue huddled in the lee of the stones. Her sandy swimsuit offered almost no protection against the piercing sea wind. She hugged her knees tight, shivering uncontrollably. By faint moonlight, she glanced down at her waterproof Patek Philippe on her wrist. Its second hand spun erratically. Powerful, strange magnetic fields across these waters had erased time, that last marker of civilization. She had no idea what hour it was. She clung desperately to the illusion that rescue would arrive by midnight, enduring the bitter cold. The aroma of roasting meat drifting down from halfway up the mountainside stabbed at her stomach, churning acid inside her. Beside her, Lu Feifei's lips had turned blue from cold. She no longer had strength even to whimper, gasping shallowly. Rapid footsteps drew near. Wang Chong rushed into shadow, clutching the coconut, eager to report his find. Ms. Su, I found it. A good one. I searched in the dark for over half an hour, scraping my hands raw. I haven't drunk a drop myself, it's all for you. Su Qingxue lifted her head and seized the coconut without reply. She cast aside all executive poise, paying no heed to sand and Zhang Tao's blood smearing its surface. She pressed her mouth firmly to the jagged opening and drank deeply. Sweet liquid flowed down her throat, like rain on parched earth. She drained every last drop, tilting the empty shell to catch the final traces. Lu Feifei watched, stretching her hands forward pleadingly. Ms. Su, please, just a little sip. It's gone. Su Qingxue lowered the empty husk and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Rehydrated, her breathing steadied. Her usual cold, commanding bearing returned. She looked down at Wang Chong kneeling before her, filled with approval. In this hellish place, he had resisted drinking for his superior. That was the mark of a loyal Shangtang employee. By contrast, Lin Fan struck her as a reckless low-class troublemaker. Well done, Wang Chong. Shangtang rewards loyalty. Once the rescue team lands tonight, and we return to Jiangcheng, the sales director position is yours. I will personally award you 500,000 yuan bonus. Wang Chong trembled with joy and bowed his head. Thank you for your trust, Miss Su. My life is yours. Zhang Tao limped back to camp and overheard every word of this promise of promotion and reward. Hiding in darkness, he ground his teeth, murderous resentment building inside him. The ocean waves kept rolling as night deepened. Sea winds grew sharper, cutting like blades. Temperature fell below 10 degrees Celsius. Su Qingxue's grand promises could not hold back hypothermia. Lu Feifei slipped toward unconsciousness, leaning against Li Bin in a futile search for warmth. Su Qingxue rubbed her arms constantly, her teeth chattering loudly in darkness. Again she glanced uphill. The cave fire burned steady. She could make out Lin Fan's silhouette sitting beside the flames, calmly turning meat over the blaze. That warmth and comfort felt completely out of reach for them. Rage and bitter defeat shattered her composure. Make fire. Her voice shook as she turned toward Wang Chong and Zhang Tao. Wang Chong, Zhang Tao, rub wood together, strike stones, build a fire right now. Nose running from cold, Wang Chong stared at her in bewilderment. Miss Su, it's pitch black. We cannot find dry wood. What are we supposed to burn? I do not care how. Su Qingxue gestured violently toward the distant fire, shouting hoarsely. Lin Fan managed it. Why can't you? Her chest heaved. She pulled out the powerful incentive that always worked in the corporate world. Whoever lights a fire here on this beach gets 800,000 yuan in cash from me, paid immediately once we are rescued. 800,000 yuan was more than an ordinary junior salesperson at Shengtang could earn in over 10 years of hard labor. Great rewards drove brave action in civilized society. Here on this magnet, disturbed desert island beach, it was nothing but a cruel joke. The wind howled. Temperatures dipped further below 10 degrees. These urban men and women, dressed in thin shirts, skirts, and swimwear, suffered through relentless cold. Starvation, thirst, and dropping body temperature pushed each one close to breaking point. Click! A cold, white beam of light flickered on in darkness. Zhang Tao fumbled to switch on a tactical flashlight he had dug out from wreckage while searching among dead coconut husks. The beam swept wildly over the beach, revealing faces blue, tinged, and lips purple with cold. Chong, Miss Su. Zhang Tao's teeth chattered as he held the light forward. I found a flashlight. It's bright. I can illuminate while we look for dry tinder and try friction, fire. Before he could finish, a gust of wind swept over them. Wang Chong snatched the flashlight away. What good is a flashlight? He stamped his feet against the chill, eyes bloodshot. Light won't warm us. He turned toward the other huddled men and shouted. 800,000. Miss Su promised it to whoever lights fire. Get moving, all of you. He tossed the flashlight to Li Bin. You hold the light. If primitive apes could start fire with wood, then well, educated people like us can too. Zhang Tao froze. He had hoped to impress Su Qingxue and claim the large reward. Now his chance had been stolen by Wang Chong. He retreated into shadow, digging his nails painfully into sand until his fingertips bled. Resentment over the stolen coconut compounded with fresh humiliation, churning inside him. Wang Chong paid no attention to his subordinate's anger. Driven by fear of freezing and the lure of money, he summoned his last reserves of strength. He found a relatively dry rotten plank to set on the sand and picked a straight dead stick. Keep the light aimed here. Adopting techniques he had seen in survival videos, he braced the stick against the plank and twisted it furiously back and forth. Screech, screech, screech. Bark scraped loudly. 1 minute. 3 minutes. Wang Chong gasped for breath. Thorns on the stick tore open his palms, raising blood-filled blisters. Blood and sawdust coated his hands. Is it smoking? Li Bin, watch closely. Is there smoke? Li Bin shone the light directly onto the friction point. In the pale glow there was only damp sawdust mixed with blood. No wisp of smoke, no hint of heat. Chong, nothing at all, Li Bin replied weakly. This wood looks dry on the surface, but it is soaked through with sea salt. It will never ignite. Get out of my way, useless fool. Another executive shoved Wang Chong aside. He grabbed 2 black rocks scavenged from rubble and struck them together over a pile of damp dead grass. Clang, clang, clang. A few tiny sparks flew, yet the grass was saturated with sea-borne moisture. Sparks died instantly without even charring the vegetation. They struggled for more than half an hour, until every man collapsed gasping on sand. Despair crashed over them like incoming tide, starting fire by wood friction, or by striking flint. Without proper dry tinder amid extreme humidity, this task for inexperienced modern people was harder than building advanced precision machinery from nothing. It's over. Everything's over. We can't start a fire. Lu Feifei huddled in the sand pit at Su Qingxue's feet, her elaborate makeup smudged into a messy mess. She could not even muster the strength to weep, only letting out ragged gasps. Su Qingxue leaned against one of her female subordinates, tilting her head upward. Her gaze crossed the rocky slope, fixed firmly on the mountainside. There, a steady, glaring orange flame burned. The aroma of cooking luncheon meat drifted over on the wind, forcing its way into her nostrils and twisting her churning stomach. She could even clearly see Lin Fan skewering a piece of golden, crisp meat on a wooden stick and slowly lifting it to his mouth. The stark contrast struck her like a resounding slap across the face of this billion-dollar female executive. Untouchable, queen of capital, up on the slope, he roasted meat beside the fire, while she could not even ignite a single flame down here. 150,000. A hoarse string of words escaped Su Qingxue's throat. She struggled to stand upright and issued one final order to the group of men sprawled lifelessly on the sand. I'll pay 150,000. Whoever can start a fire gets the money, paid as soon as we board the aircraft. Silence. Other than the wind, no one on the beach spoke. Wang Chong buried his head in the sand, pretending to be unconscious. This was never simply a matter of money. Faced with the laws of physics, 150,000 could not defy the rules of thermodynamics. Just as the atmosphere turned icy, a thin figure slowly rose from an unremarkable shadow at the edge of the group. It was Chun Jian, husband of Wang Lan, the female supervisor in the finance department. Sheng Tang Group's luxury team building trip allowed senior staff to bring family members. As an ordinary structural engineer, Chen Jian was little more than an invisible outsider in the eyes of the polished sales elites of the company. He had lingered at the very back without uttering a word during the scramble for fresh water and coconuts earlier. Now he pushed up his salt-stained half-rimmed glasses and stepped across the sand to stand before Su Qingxue. Director Su, I have a way to start a fire. Every pair of eyes locked onto him instantly. Wang Chong shot to his feet, jabbing a finger at Chen Jian and roaring. Has Wang Lan's husband lost his mind? I've rubbed my palms raw without striking a single spark, and this useless draftsman thinks he's some kind of expert? Tell him to get back and stop getting in our way. Chen Jian ignored Wang Chong's furious shouting entirely. He met Su Qingshue's gaze directly. Conventional friction fire requires extremely dry tinder and extremely high rotational speed. All the energy you expended earlier amounted to nothing more than wasted effort from a physics perspective. Chen Jian spoke with unshakable calm, laying out his reasoning clearly. Flint and steel ignition also demands high carbon steel and flint. You only have pieces of ordinary limestone. You could smash your hands to pulp and never ignite the seaweed soaked through with seawater. Su Qingxue stared at him. You can make fire? I can. Chen Jian nodded. Very well. 150,000 is yours. Start immediately, Su Qingxue ordered. Chen Jian did not move. He held up 2 fingers and waved them gently in the air. Director Su, 150,000 is not enough. I want 20 million. A brief hush fell over the beach. The next instant, Wang Chong flew into a rage. He lunged forward, grabbed Chen Jian by the collar, and sprayed spittle across his face. 20 million. Why don't you rob a bank? Trying to take advantage of Director Su at a time like this. Even your wife wouldn't dare speak to Director Su like that. Do you believe I'll drag you out and throw you into the ocean to drown right now? Wang Chong raised his arm, his knuckles bulging as he aimed a punch straight for Chen Jian's face. Stop. Su Qingxue cut Wang Chong off just in time. 20 million. 24 hours earlier, it would have been nothing more than a trivial figure buried among the numbers on Sheng Tang Group's financial statements. Tonight, however, that sum represented her chance to survive the bitter cold. Severe dehydration and hypothermia were eroding the sharp rationality she prided herself on. Without fire, she would not live long enough for the helicopter to arrive. Very well. I agree. Su Qingxue lifted her chin, clinging to the bearing of a leader. Once the fire is lit, 20 million will be transferred to Wang Lan's account without delay the moment we board the plane. Chen Jian brushed sand off his collar and unclenched the fist he had kept tight. He turned and held out a hand firmly toward Li Bin. Hand over the flashlight. Li Bin hesitated and glanced toward Wang Chong. Wang Chong spat blood, streaked saliva onto the sand, and looked away without a word. Li Bin quickly passed over the tactical flashlight. Chen Jian took the flashlight and ignored the pile of rotten wood on the ground. Instead, he twisted open the metal rear cap at the base of the light. What are you doing? That's our only light source. Zhang Tao hobbled forward, his voice shrill. Chen Jian did not spare him a glance. He flipped the flashlight upside down and tapped it, dislodging a thick 18,650 industrial lithium battery into his palm. He lifted his head and swept his eyes over the shivering crowd of professionals. Does anyone have chewing gum or a cigarette pack with foil lining inside? Silence greeted him. I have some in my bag. A female administrative staff member trembled, unzipping her crumpled bag and pulling out a pack of chewing gum softened by seawater. Chen Jian strode over, snatched the packet, tore away the outer green wrapper, and pinched free the thin silver sheet of foil inside. More than a dozen people closed in, holding their breath. No one could fathom what the quiet, overlooked man was attempting to do. Chen Jian walked behind a massive boulder. The rock blocked the piercing cold wind blowing in off the ocean. He knelt on the sand, unbuttoned his shirt, and ripped a long strip of cloth from the relatively dry undershirt pressed against his skin. He rubbed the cloth vigorously until it formed a fluffy bundle of cotton tinder. Next, he scraped dry moss powder from cracks in the nearby rock and carefully spread it at the bottom. Once everything was prepared, he folded the sheet of foil. He lowered his head and bit steadily along the foil's edge, gnawing a narrow hourglass shape into the metal. The narrowest connecting strip in the center measured less than 2 millimeters wide. Chen Jian pressed one end of the foil firmly against the battery's positive terminal. His thumb bore down. Slowly and steadily, he brought the other end toward the negative metal contact. The instant they made contact, hiss, short, circuit current surged through the foil in a fraction of a second. The narrow central strip, where resistance peaked, overheated instantly, glowing bright red before bursting into a blinding flare of pale yellow sparks. Paper fibers stuck to the back of the foil ignited immediately. Chen Jian moved with lightning speed. He clutched the tiny flame and tucked it into the pile of cotton cloth and moss he had prepared. He dropped to the ground, cupping his hands into a semicircular wind shield, puffed out his cheeks, and blew gentle, steady breaths. Huff, huff, a thin wisp of white smoke drifted upward. Then whoosh, a small orange flame, no bigger than a fingertip, flickered to life. A fire. He made fire. It's really lit. Damn, Wang Lan, your husband is incredible. The tension, charged beach erupted. Several men broke down in relieved tears, scrambling recklessly toward the shelter behind the boulder. Wang Chong reacted fastest. Using his size, he shoved the others aside and seized the spot closest to the flame, holding his hands nearly touching the embers. The frayed nerves that had pushed Su Qingxue to the brink finally relaxed. Her legs buckled, and she slid slowly down the rock face to sit on the sand. She felt the faint yet tangible warmth and looked toward Chen Jian. In this desolate place where even money lost its power, knowledge had become the only valuable currency. The fire was indeed burning, but the crowd celebrated too soon. There was no dry firewood to be found anywhere on the beach. The driftwood and kelp they dragged over was soaked by seawater, encrusted with salt and silt. The moment these materials hit the flames, crackle, pop, the damp timber split violently from the heat. Thick, acrid clouds of foul smoke billowed outward, reeking of rot. A gust of cold offshore wind shifted direction, driving the choking smoke straight into every person's face. Cough, 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 ugh. Su Qingxue bore the brunt of it. Choking until tears streamed down her face, she clamped a hand over her mouth. Her thin frame convulsed as she coughed up bitter stomach acid. Lu Feifei fared even worse, her face blackened by soot as she knelt on the sand, weeping and retching. The other male colleagues fared no better, rubbing their eyes and coughing violently. Yet not a single person stepped back. Behind them waited Bone, chilling cold. They endured the burning smoke, gasping and coughing, as they huddled as close to the miserable little fire as they could. It was pure torment. Amid this agonizing haze, the wind shifted again. A light breeze swept down from the rocky mountainside. It carried none of the suffocating smoke. Instead, it brought a rich scent powerful enough to drive anyone to despair. Luncheon meat. High starch, high fat, heavily salted preserved food. Roasted over open flames, rendered animal fat mixed with the natural fragrant aroma of camphor wood burning. The scent cut cleanly through the murky smoke below and flooded every nostril. Gurgle, a loud rumble echoed from Su Qingxue's abdomen. She clutched her stomach hard, her cheeks flushing crimson. The poised authority she maintained in corporate boardrooms was stripped away by this primal bodily reaction. Hunger. A pain more devastating than cold began to gnaw at her. The fire chased away some of the chill, reviving their metabolisms. From midday, after the yacht sank, more than a dozen hours had passed without a single bite of food. Empty stomachs churned with excess gastric acid. The raw ache inside triggered dizzying spasms. Meat. He's eating meat. Zhang Tao collapsed on the outer edge of the group surrounding the fire. His eyes stared vacantly toward the mountainside. Thick saliva dripped from his cracked lips onto his torn shirt, and he did not notice at all. Just one bite. I'd even lick the metal can he's cooking it in, Zhang Tao muttered deliriously, scraping at the sand with his fingernails. Closer to the flames, Wang Chong's face twisted horribly, stinging from the smoke. His hand closed around a sharp fragment of rock beneath him. Veins bulged on the back of his fist as he gripped it tight. Then memories crashed over him. Lin Fan kicking him aside with terrifying strength, the cold tactical blade pressed against his throat. All thoughts of rushing upward died instantly. Fight a man wielding a knife. A man capable of breaking ribs with one kick? Wang Chong released his grip, and the stone clattered onto the sand. He could not win. He dared not provoke him. His unbearable hunger needed an outlet. Wang Chong turned his head slowly, scanning the people around him. His gaze finally locked onto Li Bin's exposed arm. When starvation grows extreme, humans are capable of consuming anything. Calm down. Everyone stay calm. Su Qingxue bit her lip, using the sharp pain to cling on to her last shred of reason. Midnight. I said rescue will arrive by midnight. Once we board the helicopter, I will book an entire Michelin restaurant on the Bund. Eat as much as you want. To bolster her own words, Su Qingxue raised her wrist and struggled to glance at her waterproof Patek Philippe watch, her sole anchor of hope. But the second her eyes fell on the dial, Su Qingxue froze completely. The thin second hand was not ticking clockwise. It spun wildly halfway around the face, then jerked backward several ticks. The hour and minute hands spun erratically, crossing and tangling with one another. Severe geomagnetic anomalies in these waters had destroyed even this precision mechanical watch. What time is it? Su Qingshue's voice warped completely. Wang Chong. What time is it? Wang Chong snapped out of his daze, rolling up his sleeve to check his Rolex. Director Su, the watch is broken. All the hands are spinning randomly. Lu Feifei let out a shrill scream. My Cartier isn't working either. The hour hand is turning backward. Mine too. Everything's gone haywire. Panic. A despair greater than cold and hunger shattered their mental defenses. In civilized society, time was the foundation of order. Now, that order had collapsed. They had no way of knowing how long this endless night had dragged on. Was it 8 o'clock in the evening? Or 2 in the early morning? The promise of midnight rescue, the thought that kept them alive, had turned into a meaningless empty vow without any way to measure time. Time stretched endlessly. Choking smoke, bitter wind, searing stomach cramps. Every second dragged on as long as an entire year. Beside this smoke, choked, ineffective fire, these people who once stood among society's elite were reduced to helpless prey. Up on the mountainside, inside the cave, bright flames burned, free of suffocating smoke. Burning camphor wood radiated gentle heat, warming the cave and keeping the air dry. Lin Fan finished chewing the last piece of grease, glistening roasted luncheon meat. The golden notification box of his Omnivision vision refreshed, relaying the miserable drama unfolding on the beach below. Status update for targets below. Su Qingxue President, Sheng Tang Group. Severe hunger, mild carbon monoxide poisoning. Mental defense collapse progress, 85%. Suffering profound fear brought on by lost sense of time. Wang Chong sales supervisor. Sharply declining rationality. Suppressing overwhelming hunger. Target has developed dangerous predatory impulses toward other survivors. Chunjian structural engineer has gained temporary influence through technical knowledge. Extremely calm. Evaluating the remaining value of every person. Paying particular attention to severely dehydrated women. Ready to betray others at any moment. Lin Fan twisted his wrist and slid his tactical knife neatly back into its sheath. He stood and walked toward the cave entrance. Midnight. Lin Fan curled his lips into a scoff. On this island, there is no midnight. Only the law of the jungle. The fire Qin Jian had lit had turned into nothing short of a disaster. Soaked driftwood and seaweed carbonized rapidly under heat, releasing thick clouds of irritating sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide. Dense smoke billowed outward. More than a dozen ragged men and women huddled around the flames, tearing up and coughing violently. Yet none dared step away. Beyond the smoke lay freezing temperatures. What time is it? Can anyone tell me what time it is? Su Qingxue clutched her hair in both hands, her voice raw and unrecognizable. Her once elegant face was streaked black and gray from soot. No one answered. Every watch spun wildly, the erratic hands acting like a countdown to doom. Wang Chong and the others coughed until their lungs burned, silently cursing Su Qingxue to the core. If only this team-building trip had never happened. Yet the promise of midnight rescue, promotion to sales director, and generous bonuses kept their anger contained. If they could endure until the helicopter arrived, every hardship now would be the price of future advancement. No one dared cross Su Qingxue at this moment. Even choking on smoke, they endured silently. Why hasn't the helicopter arrived? How long has it been? Extreme hunger, cold, and the endless darkness warped their perception of time completely. Where is the rescue? Director Su, you said help would come before midnight. I think it's already past 1 in the morning. Where is the helicopter? Su Qingxue trembled, unable to speak through chattering lips. She wanted to know too. Where was the helicopter? Once they returned, she would fire every useless member of the operations team. Lu Feifei huddled at the outer edge of the group. Her lightweight outer shirt was in tatters, and her swimwear hung loosely on her frame. For a famous celebrity, this was a sight no fan would ever expect to see. Smoke burned her throat raw, and her stomach was so empty she no longer had the strength to retch. She lifted her head. Through thick plumes of smoke, her gaze fixed firmly on the mountainside. Up there was no choking haze. Only steady golden firelight and waves of roasting meat drifting downward. Lu Feifei swallowed dryly, a tearing pain spreading through her throat. She glanced at Su Qingxue, unraveling under stress, then at the others fighting for warmer spots near the fire. These people were doomed. Staying with them, she would not survive the night. Lu Feifei bit her lip, using pain to sharpen her senses. She pushed herself upright from the sand. While everyone else was consumed by panic, she quietly stepped away from the crowd. She turned and stumbled slowly up the rocky slope toward the glow of fire. She could barely see the path in the dark, sharp stones cutting her bare feet and vines scraping her face. She paid it no mind. After years navigating the entertainment industry, she understood the rules of survival all too well. Dignity, principles, her pure public image, those were luxuries only affordable when you had food and warmth. On this island where time itself broke down, whoever held water, fire, and food held all the power. Right now, those resources belonged to the person inside that cave. Up the mountainside, Lin Fan leaned against dry rock, twirling his black tactical knife between his fingers. Camphor wood burned steadily in the fire pit, releasing constant warmth. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Suspended in the air before him was a golden universal notification panel. Current time, 21:05, ambient temperature, 8 degrees Celsius. Status of target group on the beach. Mass hysteria has broken out accompanied by distorted time perception. The first case of hypothermic shock is expected within 3 hours. It was only 9 o'clock. Lin Fan curled his lips into a cold smile. None of those usually arrogant elites had made it through the first night on the desert island, and half of them had already lost their minds. Rustle, faint scraping sounds drifted from outside the cave entrance. Lin Fan's grip on his knife tightened instantly. A wild animal, he had just stood up when a pale hand covered in sand and blood clutched the rock edge of the cave. Moments later, a wounded yet delicate face poked into view. Lu Feifei. She gasped heavily, her chest rising and falling violently with each breath. Her purple bikini was far too skimpy to cover her figure, large stretches of skin exposed to the cold air and crisscrossed with tiny scratches. She caught sight of Lin Fan. She also spotted the blazing bonfire behind him, alongside the half-empty luncheon meat tin. Lu Feifei's eyes lit up at once. Lin Fan. Her voice was hoarse, and it was hard to tell if the sultry tone was deliberate or brought on by the smoke. Lin Fan stared at her coldly, the tip of his knife angled toward the ground. Get out. 3 words, devoid of any emotion. Lu Feifei froze, and tears welled up instantly. Instead of retreating, she scrambled forward into the cave. She knew exactly what tempted men. Back at the company, Lin Fan had been nothing more than a lowly intern who could never bring himself to meet her gaze when speaking. She believed a simple flirtation would be enough to captivate someone like him who rarely got close to women. Lin Fan, I'm so cold. I'm truly freezing. Lu Feifei crawled forward as she wept. She moved slowly on purpose, twisting her waist into an exaggerated curve. Her tattered cover, slipped completely off, revealing her smooth back and slender waist. She crawled until she reached Lin Fan's feet, then stretched out her hands and clung tightly to his calves. Please, let me warm myself by the fire, just for a little while. She tilted her head upward. The face known to the public as pure and flawless now wore undisguised entreaty. Lin Fan looked down at the woman at his feet. A top-tier A-list celebrity in the domestic entertainment industry, the national crush countless men dreamed of, Lu Feifei. In the civilized world of the past, Lin Fan would be roughly shoved away by bodyguards if he so much as glanced at her from afar at annual galas. Even billionaires queued up and spent lavishly just to get a dinner invitation with her. On screen, she played aloof celestial maidens, an untouchable goddess. But now, this so-called untouchable goddess was groveling at the feet of a lowly intern. The stark contrast between their statuses surged straight to his mind. Lin Fan was a normal man, 24 years old, full of youthful vigor, and had never been in a relationship. Though his mind remained sharp and clear, he could not fully suppress his physical instincts. A burst of heat stirred inside him. Let go. Lin Fan's voice deepened. Lu Feifei caught the subtle shift in his tone. She was convinced her current appearance could sway nearly any man. I won't let go. Instead of releasing her hold, she slid her hands upward along his legs. Her well-maintained hands, dusty as they were, remained incredibly soft. Lin Fan, it's terrifying out there. Everyone's lost their minds. This place is the only safe haven. She looked up at him, her voice honeyed. If you let me stay and give me some water, I'll do anything you ask. Anything I ask? Lin Fan let out a cold laugh. Yes, anything. Lu Feifei pulled her hands away and sat back on the ground. She undid the last thin strap of her bikini top right in front of him, letting the fabric slide aside. Her upper body was exposed beneath the firelight. Grime could not hide her striking figure. She bit her lower lip, a reckless glint in her eyes. Out there, I'm a big star. A single dinner engagement costs millions. Here, I belong to you. She propped herself up on her hands and stretched out fully, striking her most alluring pose. Lin Fan, Didn't you watch Nine Heavens Mystic Goddess, the drama I starred in? In the show, I was an exalted goddess. Right now, I'm entirely yours. She moistened her cracked lips with her tongue. The thrill of seeing a revered idol brought down from her pedestal hung thick in the warm, enclosed cave, an irresistible temptation. Lin Fan's breathing grew heavier. The universal notification panel flickered wildly in his vision. Target: Lu Feifei, status: desperate for survival, attempting to secure long-term safety by relying on her charm. Hidden trait: scheming and calculating. She may turn against you the moment danger passes. Lin Fan knew full well that beautiful women were often masters of deception. But so what? On this island, he held absolute power and controlled all vital survival resources. A venomous snake stripped of its fangs was nothing more than an amusing sight. The instincts he had suppressed for 24 years broke free at last in this lawless island, where all moral restraints vanished. Lin Fan stepped forward. He grabbed Lu Feifei by the hair, forcing her to tilt her head back. Ah! Lu Feifei cried out in pain. Fear flashed across her face, quickly overtaken by excitement. If he allowed her to stay near him, she would survive. You want to remain? Lin Fan looked down at her. I do. Lu Feifei's head was forced backward. Then show me your sincerity. Lin Fan released her and drove his black tactical dagger into a crack in the rock with a clang. He returned to sit beside the fire. Lu Feifei hesitated for only a second before understanding. She crawled toward him without hesitation, setting aside all the reserve of a celebrity. She lifted her arms and looped them around Lin Fan's neck. Flames flickered, and the temperature inside the cave seemed to keep rising. Lin Fan leaned back against the rock wall and closed his eyes, feeling Lu Feifei draw close. A powerful sense of dominance washed over him completely. In the civilized world, he was not even worthy of looking at a woman like her. Now, she leaned into him, trying her hardest to win his favor. This was what power felt like. This was the law of survival. In the shadowed corner of the cave, Songya stared in shock, frozen stiff. She was still wrapped in her tattered white shirt, hands clamped tightly over her mouth. Dancing firelight cast Lu Feifei's silhouette onto the rock wall. Songya's eyes widened, her mind going blank. That was Lu Feifei. The cold, ethereal Nine Heavens Mystic Goddess on screen, the white moonlight of countless fans, the celebrity company executives believed was far out of their league. Only at noon on the cruise ship, Songya had watched a wealthy young heir queue for half an hour just to propose a toast to Lu Feifei, only to receive a perfunctory, fake smile. Yet now, on this desolate, brutal island without basic supplies, this untouchable goddess clung to Lin Fan, pouring every effort into pleasing an intern who earned only 3,000 yuan each month. Songya watched Lu Feifei's practiced movements, and her entire worldview crumbled. Morality? Dignity? Reserve? Faced with extreme cold and hunger on this island without laws or rescue, those things were worth less than driftwood for the fire. Lu Feifei caught sight of Songya. She did not want anyone to witness her humble display. You get out. Stand guard by the cave entrance. Songya jolted and lifted her head, utterly stunned. Go outside. Gusty winds blew outside, and the temperature had fallen far below 10 degrees Celsius. She wore nothing but a torn shirt and damp underwear, without any shoes. Leaving the warmth of the bonfire to stand guard by the drafty entrance amounted to a death sentence. Lin Fan. Songya's voice trembled, tears pooling in her eyes. It's freezing out there. I'll freeze to death. She edged closer to the fire. Cold wind made her shiver. The urge to survive and crave warmth overpowered the last shreds of her restraint. If Lu Feifei could do this to stay safe, why couldn't she? Though she was merely an intern, her figure was no less striking than Lu Feifei's. Lin Fan, don't drive me away. Panic surged through Songya. She clutched the collar of her shirt. If you let me stay by the fire, if you want. I can do the same. Her face burned red as she spoke. She shut her eyes and reached to undo the remaining buttons on her shirt. Before Lin Fan could reply, Lu Feifei pulled away. Her beautiful features twisted with rage. Within this cave, Lin Fan's favor meant survival resources. She had fought so hard to secure this safety. She would never let another girl compete with her. What do you think you are? Do you really believe you can steal him from me? Lu Feifei stood abruptly, still partially undressed, and pointed sharply at Songya, her tone vicious. The gentle celebrity facade vanished. Take a good look at yourself. A poor intern who cannot afford luxury goods. And you dare act shamelessly here. Lu Feifei sneered sharply. My legs are insured for 80 million outside. One Hermes bag of mine costs more than you could earn your entire life. What do you have to compete with me? Your cheap clothes. Songya paled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Gentle by nature, she had never endured such biting, vicious insults. I only wanted to warm myself by the fire, she whispered weakly. Want warmth? Then get out of here. Lu Feifei pressed forward relentlessly. Lin Fan is mine. He only needs me to look after him. An inexperienced girl like you wouldn't know how to satisfy a man. She puffed out her chest in blatant provocation. Leave now before I slap you. Sonya was backed into the corner. She turned to Lin Fan pleadingly, hoping the quiet, honest intern she knew at work would speak up for her. Sonya? Yes. Sonya thought Lin Fan would order her out, but he cut her off before she could speak. Have some sense. Turn around and close your eyes. Lin Fan. Lu Feifei grew anxious. She could not afford for Sonya to witness everything. Lu Feifei, understand this. You are allowed to stay not because you are inherently irresistible. I am drawn only to the image you portrayed on screen, not you. If you keep making demands, you can leave right now. Lu Feifei froze. She quickly put on a sweet, flattering smile and pressed herself against Lin Fan again. Brother Lin Fan, I was foolish just now. I will make sure you enjoy every moment. Her voice was sickly sweet. Sonya hastily turned her back. Even if she was asked to watch, she had no desire to. Lu Feifei straddled Lin Fan's lap, wrapping her arms around his neck and pressing tightly against his chest. I learned quite a few tricks from senior crew members on set. I'll use every single one for you today. She breathed softly against his ear before leaning down to kiss him fiercely. Lin Fan did not push her away. He reached out and gripped her slender waist, pulling her firmly against him. Ah! Lu Feifei let out a cry that mixed pain and delight. All moral chains shattered on this isolated island. Lin Fan closed his eyes, accepting the attentions of the nation's beloved celebrity. Lu Feifei fought desperately to survive, casting away all shame to do everything she could to please him. The temperature inside the cave climbed higher. Flickering firelight outlined their overlapping forms on the rock wall. Lin Fan's breathing grew rough. He stared at the woman he once only admired from posters, now flushed and focused entirely on him. An overwhelming sense of conquest filled his body and mind. This was power. This was strength. Wealthy tycoons and A-list celebrities meant nothing here. Without his permission, not even a sip of water would be within their reach. Lin Fan, I'm yours. All of me belongs to you. Lu Feifei dug her fingernails into his back, her voice hoarse as she continued to lean into him. She understood the harder she tried to satisfy him, the more resources she would gain. More than an hour passed before Lu Feifei collapsed weakly in his arms, soaked in sweat without the strength to move a muscle. Still, a triumphant smile tugged at her lips. She knew she would not suffer from cold or hunger tonight. Once they were rescued, no one would remember what happened here. In a few years, nobody would recall the name Lin Fan at all. Lin Fan turned and tossed a canned food tin toward her. This is for you. Just yesterday, she would have turned her nose up at such cheap food, finding it repulsive. Now, the can seemed far more desirable than Michelin-starred truffle dishes. Thank you, master. Lin Fan let out a cold laugh and prepared to sit back by the fire to rest. Just then, heavy footsteps accompanied by ragged panting echoed from outside the cave entrance. Lin Fan. Lin Fan glanced toward the cave mouth by firelight. A haggard figure leaned against the rock, swaying unsteadily. Her pure white one-piece swimsuit was stained gray, black with mud and smoke. Her carefully styled hair fell messily over her shoulders. Ash from toxic smoke coated her face. Her lips cracked and bleeding, and bloodshot eyes stared forward. Despite her wretched appearance, her striking figure and innate icy aura of someone accustomed to authority made her identity immediately clear. Su Qingxue, CEO of Sheng Tang Group, a billionaire queen of capital. She could not endure the toxic fumes and bitter cold on the beach any longer. She cast aside all her dignity and the prestige of a billionaire executive. She climbed the rocky slope with heavy, stumbling steps. Su Qingxue gripped the rock tightly. Her gaze moved past Lin Fan to the leftover luncheon meat beside the fire, then landed on Lu Feifei, who was barely clothed. Her pupils shrank sharply, and her body trembled violently. Lin Fan looked down at the female executive he had never dared meet eyes with before, a cruel, mocking smile spreading across his face. Well, if it isn't President Su. He pulled his tactical dagger free from the rock and twirled it in his hand. The blade reflected the firelight, stinging Su Qingxue's eyes. What's this? Did the poisonous bonfire party on the beach fail to entertain you? So you've come to inspect my humble shelter? Su Qingxue stared at the scene inside the cave, her mind briefly going numb. Beneath the dancing flames, Lin Fan, the low, paid intern who never dared hold her gaze at work, sat comfortably beside the warm fire. At his feet, Lu Feifei, the proud national crush dominating the entertainment industry, leaned against him with no clothes on. The shocking sight tore apart the class divides and moral principles Su Qingxue had upheld for over 20 years. Lin Fan, you! How could you? Her voice shook, whether from shock or freezing cold. She pointed alternately at Lu Feifei and Lin Fan, unable to form a complete sentence. Lu Feifei heard the voice and lifted her head. Panic flashed briefly when she saw Su Qingxue, yet it faded quickly. If this woman died on the island today, that would be one thing. But if she made it back alive, the sight of her humbling herself before Lin Fan tonight, even willing to sacrifice herself, would become a fatal leverage in Su Qingxue's hands. Dealing with the young girl Song Yu would be easy, but she could not let Su Qingxue stay alive to talk. In that case, the best solution was to drag the lofty corporate president down into this mire of despair as well. Why, President Su, what brings you up here at this hour? Lu Feifei made no attempt to hide herself. Instead, she leaned further into Lin Fan's embrace, looping an arm around his waist and glancing sideways at Su Qingxue. It's freezing out there, isn't it? I heard the waves crashing against the reef from the cave entrance just now. The sound sounds just like a death knell. There's no need to keep forcing yourself. That expensive swimsuit clinging to your skin must feel awful. I saw you down below, overcome by toxic fumes, barely able to stand straight. Come inside, President Su. This fire is wonderfully warm. Lin Fan has meat and clean drinking water here. All you need to do is set aside that pointless pride as a president, and this place can feel like paradise. Look at me. I'm not cold at all, and my stomach is full. There's no one else around here. No cameras, no bodyguards, no pesky fans. Out here, who cares that you're a billionaire corporate leader? We're all just women. Staying alive matters more than anything, doesn't it? Su Qingxue was utterly disgusted by Lu Feifei's shameless demeanor. Her stomach churned violently, and the physical revulsion made her gag. Lu Feifei, be quiet, Su Qingxue shouted. You shameless woman. You're a public figure. How can you face your fans? You grovel before a low-ranking intern just for a little food. You bring shame to all women. It's no wonder people say the entertainment industry is full of garbage. Lu Feifei's expression froze for a moment before she smiled even more brightly. Pride? You want to talk about pride with me, President Su? Standing in that cave entrance, soaked and shivering like a drowned rat. Is that what you call pride? Su Qingxue trembled with rage. She took a deep breath, forcing down the shock and humiliation welling up inside her, struggling to restore the imposing aura she carried as president. Lin Fan, I have to admit, you've surprised me. On this island, you have far more survival experience than the rest of us. You're ruthless and patient. Her voice hardened into the commanding tone she used in board meetings. But you ought to understand this is reality, not some self-indulgent online novel. Once the rescue helicopter from Shengtang Group arrives, all order will be restored. As she spoke, her eyes drifted involuntarily toward the half-eaten canned luncheon meat beside the fire. The brown meat sizzled over the flames, and the rich aroma of roasted fat taunted her stomach, which ached from hunger and acid reflux. Gurgle. The sound of her empty stomach echoed sharply inside the quiet cave. Su Qingxue's beautiful, ash-streaked face burned red. The humiliation of being betrayed by her own body made her wish the ground would swallow her whole. She bit her lip hard, tearing her gaze away from the meat, and laid out her offer. Lin Fan, speaking as president of Shengtang Group, I am formally proposing a deal. Let me have the fire, hand over all food and water to my control, and guarantee my safety on this island. Once we return to Jiangxing tomorrow after the rescue arrives, I will immediately promote you to vice president of Shengtang Group. Your starting annual salary will be 10 million yuan. On top of that, you will receive a 300 square meter luxury apartment in the city center. I can even send you overseas for further education, letting you escape the bottom rungs of society entirely. Su Qingxue tilted her chin upward, a hint of condescension glinting in her eyes. She knew exactly how ordinary people struggled, slaving away each month just to cover rent and living expenses. No poor nobody could resist the chance to leap social class with such wealth laid out before them. In her mind, this was not merely a survival negotiation. It was a favor she was granting Lin Fan. Lin Fan, however, did not spare her a glance. He picked up a piece of roasted luncheon meat and slowly brought it to his mouth under Su Qingxue's desperate gaze. Crunch! The crisp outer layer broke, and rich grease filled his mouth. He chewed deliberately, swallowing before exhaling a satisfied sigh. President Su, Did you inhale too much sulfur dioxide down there and fry your brain? Your empty promissory note isn't even worth using as toilet paper on this island. Vice President, 10 million yuan. Do you think I care about numbers right now? Su Qingshue's face darkened, overcome by fury. The disrespect from someone she viewed as a subordinate pushed her over the edge. Lin Fan, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Do you think you can get away with this just because you hold an advantage right now? 50 million. I'll give you 50 million yuan, plus 20% of Shengtang Group's shares. You could never earn that sum in 100 lifetimes. Agree, and you can climb straight to the top and become truly privileged. Climb the social ladder? Lin Fan laughed out loud as if she had said something absurd. After a moment, he stood and walked slowly towards Su Qingxue. For the first time, Su Qingxue thought there was something frightening in the intern's eyes. She stepped back instinctively, her pale legs scraping against the stony ground until her back pressed against the cold, damp rock wall, trapped with nowhere to run. Su Qingxue, open your eyes and look at the sky outside. Look at that malfunctioning Patek Philippe on your wrist. Lin Fan gripped her delicate chin, forcing her to stare out of the cave at the pitch black sea where waves churned endlessly. This is uncharted waters within the Devil's Triangle. The magnetic field here warps light and distorts time. Your useless satellite phone is less useful than a brick for propping up a table. You thought rescue would arrive at midnight? 50 million yuan. I'm telling you, even if you brought the entire Shengtang Group here, it wouldn't buy you a single sip of my water on this island. No, that can't be, you're lying. You're just getting revenge on me, trying to scare me. Su Qingxue shook her head frantically, undeniable fear surfacing in her eyes. Yet her innate arrogance made her refuse to concede. You're just a low-level intern. What do you know about satellite communications? Rescue will come. Even if my company's staff are incompetent, my father will send people to save me. Lin Fan sneered at her delusional stubbornness and released her chin. Very well. If you're so certain rescue is coming, why are you intruding into my shelter? Go back down and wait for your helicopter with Wang Chong and the others. And a word of warning, temperatures are still dropping outside. I hope you live long enough to see tomorrow's sunrise. Lin Fan pointed toward the cave entrance, dismissing her without mercy, then turned back to the fire and added more firewood. Su Qingxue froze, unable to move her legs. Frigid wind howled outside. The temperature had dropped below 5 degrees Celsius. Her swimsuit clung to her skin, draining the last traces of heat from her body. She could feel her body temperature slipping, her consciousness growing fuzzy. If she stepped outside right now without fire or food, she would not survive the night. The instinct to survive finally shattered the pride of the untouchable female president. Lin Fan. Her voice softened completely, trembling with humiliation, edged with tears. I'm so cold, and I'm starving. What terms do you want to let me stay? I will consider anything within my power. In Su Qingxue's eyes, this was the greatest compromise she had ever made in her life. What terms do I want? Lin Fan sat back beside the fire, his gaze sweeping slowly over Su Qingxue's figure. There was no denying she possessed stunning natural beauty. Her slender waist, graceful frame, and long, pale legs glowed faintly in the firelight, even smudged with mud. After a long pause, he spoke. My condition is simple. Give up your stubborn pride and earn your place here. If you can prove you understand your current situation, this half can of luncheon meat and a spot beside the fire will be yours. Su Qingxue's eyes widened. She stared at Lin Fan in disbelief, as if looking at a madman. What did you say? Anger flooded her clear eyes. In civilized society, she controlled the billion-yuan Shengtang Group. Countless business tycoons begged for the chance to dine with her. Yet this intern who earned a mere 3,000 yuan each month, someone she would normally never glance at, dared to humiliate her like this. Just as Su Qingxue shook with rage, ready to erupt, Lu Fei walked over. Lin Fan did nothing to stop her. President Su, are you still clinging to your identity as a billionaire leader at a time like this? Lu Fei lowered her voice. Can't you see the bigger picture? You know exactly how cold it is outside. Do you think your body can endure long enough to wait for rescuers? Su Qingxue looked at Lu Fei, barely recognizing the pure, beloved idol everyone admired on screen. Ignoring Su Qingxue's murderous glare, Lu Fei leaned closer and whispered, You always calculate risks and returns in business. Can't you work out this simple equation? Lower your head now, get food, water, and a warm spot by the fire to rest as you wait for rescue. Once we board the rescue helicopter, everything changes. We can leave him stranded on this island alone. After that, only we will know what happened tonight. You can go back to being the untouchable queen. Su Qingxue's mind reeled after hearing those words. Her worldview crumbled to pieces. She stared at Lu Feifei's beautiful yet twisted face, overcome by nausea. "Shut up," Su Qingxue roared at Lu Feifei. "You shameless woman. Do you think everyone lacks self-respect the way you do? You'd abandon every shred of dignity just to stay alive." She turned back toward Lin Fan, grinding her teeth. "Lin Fan, you are shameless and cruel. How dare you? You expect me to stoop to the same level as her? You're dreaming. Look at yourself. A nobody stuck at the bottom of society, and you think you're worthy of my compromise? You're reaching far beyond your station." Su Qingxue completely lost control, hurling every vicious insult she could think of. Her self-esteem, the pride nurtured by 20 years of wealth and privilege, would never allow her to beg an employee she had once ignored entirely. Lin Fan showed no anger at her stream of abuse. Finished, he chewed the meat and yawned, tossing a dry branch into the flames, sending sparks flying upward. "If you're done, leave. I have no room for useless people here, and certainly no room for someone who refuses to accept reality." "You." Su Qingxue shook violently. "Very well. Lin Fan, mark my words. I will repay every bit of this 100-fold once rescue arrives tomorrow. I will make your life miserable in Jiangsheng." Su Qingxue threw down her thread and turned to walk resolutely out of the cave. She would rather freeze to death outside, rather than be consumed by the sea wind, than bow to this man she deemed inferior. But the moment she stepped out of the cave, bitter wind cut into her like shards of blades. She shuddered involuntarily. Much of her desperate resolve vanished instantly. It was unbearably cold, not the mild chill of air conditioning, but a bitter freeze that seeped beneath her skin and gnawed at her bones. Clenching her teeth, Su Qingxue trudged back down to the hellish beach below. Inside the cave, warmth prevailed. Outside the cave, bitter cold and despair reigned. The long, brutal night was slow torture for the survivors on the beach. Their fire of damp driftwood and seaweed had not gone out. Buffeted by winds of 4 or 5 levels, the embers at its core burned bright red. The cost, however, was thick clouds of choking sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide billowing from the wet logs. There was fire and warmth, yet anyone seeking heat had to endure toxic smoke strong enough to fell people. Cough, cough. "I'm so cold. Manager Wang, help me, I don't want to die." Dozens of men and women huddled together behind the fire to escape the wind, tears streaming down their faces. They tried to share body heat and cling to the faint radiance of the flames to fight the freezing temperatures. Worse trouble loomed. Strange rustling sounds echoed from the broken woods behind them, as if large arthropods crawled across dead branches. Occasional wild animal growls sent chills down everyone's spines. Crushed by bitter cold, hunger, toxic fumes, and unspoken fear, these once self-proclaimed elite professionals cast aside all civility, revealing raw animal instinct. Violent fights broke out over spots close to the fire where smoke was thinner. To shield himself better against the wind, Wang Chong dragged Lu from the finance department and forced him in front of him to block the cold gusts. Lu was frail already, soaked through by seawater the previous day. Now the wind blasted straight against his back, draining his body heat at an alarming rate. "Changgu, I can't take it anymore. I feel strangely hot." Lu's eyes grew unfocused, his pupils dilating, and a bizarre smile stretched across his face. Chuckling emptily, he began tearing off his clothes. "So hot. I need to cool off. I want to wash." "You've lost your mind." Wang Chong slapped him hard across the face. Lu felt nothing. He kept stripping until only his underwear remained. The cold wind hit him, and he collapsed rigidly onto the sand, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. Everyone watched in terror. Despair, fear, and the shadow of death weighed heavily on them. They begged silently, praying Su Qingxue's promised helicopter would descend and save them from this hell. All they received in reply was the endless roar of waves and relentless icy wind. Time dragged on endlessly. When the first harsh ray of sunlight pierced the heavy gray clouds and fell across Devil Island's beach, the terrifying long night finally ended. Su Qingxue forced her eyes open. Thin frost had formed on her long eyelashes. "It's dawn." She used her last strength to grip rough rock and staggered to her feet. She lifted her head and stared at the clear blue sky overhead. "The helicopter? Where's my helicopter?" Su Qingxue twisted her stiff neck, scanning the sky and sea frantically. Nothing. There was no one. The sky stretched blue and hopeless. Only broken pieces of the sunken yacht bobbed on the waves. Not even a seabird could be seen. No roar of rotor blades. No shouts from rescuers. The world was eerily silent. "Impossible. This cannot be true." Su Qingxue broke down completely, tears streaming down her ash-streaked cheeks and carving muddy trails. She owned the most advanced satellite equipment, and Shengtong's rescue team stood ready 24 hours a day. Why had no one come? Why? Her frantic questions were cut short by shrill screams nearby. Someone's dead. Lu is dead. Xiao Wang's gone too. His head is split open. Xiao Li doesn't have a pulse. Sunlight chased away the darkness and laid bare the cruel scene on the beach. The toxic fire had burned down to smoldering ash. Lu from finance lay naked on the sand, that strange smile still frozen on his face, his body stiff from frost. Salesman Xiao Wang's blood stained the sand beside the reef. Public relations Wu Xiaoli curled into a ball, eyes open in death. Two more people had stopped breathing. Lu's body had a grayish, waxy sheen beneath the sunlight. He lay naked on the sand, a grin curling on his face that sent a chill creeping up the back of anyone who saw it. Xiao Wang met an even grimmer end. No one knew when he had tumbled off the reef. The back of his skull had crashed straight onto a sharp rock spur, leaving a large pool of dried blood. His eyes hung half open, gazing neither toward the sky nor anyone standing nearby. Lily from the public relations department huddled in the furthest corner. Her arms clamped tightly around her knees, curled into a tight ball, the body's primal, final attempt to retain warmth in her last living moments. Two more corpses lay piled together, their limbs tangled so badly it was impossible to tell who was on top of whom. The survivors stood beside the bodies. Not a single word was spoken. Waves crashed rhythmically against the shore. Zhou from administration snapped first. A shrill, off, key scream tore from his throat, and his legs buckled. He crashed onto the sand. 5 dead, 5 people. We're all going to die? We're all going to perish on this god-forsaken island. His cry acted like a fuse. Panic ignited among everyone in an instant. Help! Somebody save us. I don't want to die. I refuse to die in this terrible place. Director Su, you said rescue would arrive by midnight last night. Where are they? Where are the planes? A dust-streaked male employee charged towards Su Qingxue. Bloodshot eyes bulged, veins bulging on his neck as he sprayed spit across her face. You lied to us. You've been lying this entire time. What so-called rescue? Your promises are worth less than hot air. Su Qingxue stepped back. She stared at the contorted face in front of her, barely recognizable. What was his name again? Someone from the tech department? Or logistics? She could not recall. Back at the company, a man like this would never even be permitted through the doors of her office. Yet now, this man whose name she could not be bothered to remember was shouting accusations straight to her face, using language she had never heard in her 20-odd years of life. Everyone, stay calm. Su Qingxue raised her voice instinctively. Poisonous smoke, sea wind, and dehydration throughout the night had ravaged her throat. No one listened. The crowd descended into full-blown chaos. Some crouched on the ground, heads in hands, wailing helplessly. Others scrambled onto the reefs, scanning the open ocean. One man knelt beside Lu's body, shaking the lifeless form over and over, repeating the same phrase. Lu, wake up. Don't sleep. The sun's up. Wang Chong leaned against a large reef, silent. His head hung low, hands stuffed into his pockets, shoulders trembling constantly. It was not from the cold. It was terror. More than one person had seen him use Lu as a human windbreak the night before. Now that Lu was dead, what if someone brought the incident up? What if everyone held him accountable for the death? He would go to prison the moment they got back. He quickly swept his gaze across the surroundings. Everyone was lost in hysteria. No one was paying attention to him. Zhang Tao stood at the edge of the crowd. His expression was blank. It was not composure, but utter numbness. He looked at Lu's eerily smiling corpse, fixated on one single thought. If they could not get out today. Lu's jacket. The gray windbreaker Lu had torn off in his fit of madness the previous night had blown 2 meters away, crumpled on the sand. Zhang Tao slowly moved toward it. He hooked the hem with his toe and dragged it close. Bending down, he picked it up and shook off the sand. He pulled it over his shoulders. Clothing from the living or the dead, it did not matter, as long as it kept him warm. No one noticed him through the whole sequence. Chen Jian pushed his salt-crusted glasses up his nose. He knelt beside 3 of the bodies, examining each one in turn. His wife Wang Lan stood behind him, clutching tightly at the hem of his shirt, every trace of color drained from her face. How did they die? Wang Lan asked. Lu suffered paradoxical undressing. Chen Jian stood. When core body temperature drops below 30 degrees Celsius, the part of the brain regulating temperature malfunctions completely. The victim feels unbearably hot and rips off all their clothes in a frenzy. Xiao Wang had a seizure during the night and fell. He hit the back of his head on that sharp rock. Terrible luck. Lily died from a combination of hypothermia, dehydration, and carbon monoxide poisoning. She was the physically weakest and the first to succumb. He glanced toward the pile of charred campfire remains, jaw tightening. That fire had saved most of their lives. But the cost was clear. When there was no wind, smoldering damp, rotten timber filled the air with carbon monoxide, concentrated enough to kill the most vulnerable among them. If we are not rescued today, Shan Jian lowered his voice, speaking only for Wang Lan to hear, more people will die. Su Qingxue gripped the reef, drawing 3 deep breaths in a row. They could not fall apart. She must not let the situation spiral completely out of control right now. If these people lost all faith in her, she would have nothing left. No bodyguards, no assistants, no lawyers. The only valuable asset she still possessed was her voice. Back at the company, she had navigated countless crises. Public relations disasters, stock market crashes, senior executives embezzling funds. Time and again, she had turned the tide with a single press conference. This time would be no different. She needed an explanation. Something to cling to for these people teetering on the brink of collapse. It did not need to be true. It only needed to sound believable. Su Qingxue let go of the reef and walked slowly to the center of the crowd. Everyone be quiet. The shout drained the last moisture from her throat. It felt as though a blade scraped her windpipe, sharp pain making her vision swim. But it worked. Screams and weeping fell silent for 2 brief seconds. Dozens of bloodshot eyes locked onto her at once. Su Qingxue stood straight. Her white one-piece swimsuit was stained beyond recognition, long hair matted into clumps against her shoulders. Yet her bearing remained identical to how she carried herself during board meetings on the 58th floor of Shangtang Group's headquarters. Back rigid, chin tilted slightly upward, hands folded before her. Instincts forged from years navigating the capital markets ran deep within her. Tragedy struck last night. Lu and the others are gone. She paused for a beat. Her gaze swept across every survivor. As president of Shangtang Group, I give you my word. If we make it back alive, Shangtang will take full responsibility for the families of Lu, Xiaowang, Lily, and the other 2 colleagues. 1 million yuan in compensation for each victim. The company will cover all costs for their children's education, their parents' elderly care, and all outstanding mortgages and vehicle loans. Every cent will be paid. This offer extends to all of us who survive. Su Qingxue glanced around, slowing her pace of speech. Every person here who sticks it out until rescue arrives will receive 200,000 yuan in cash upon returning to Jiangxing, plus guaranteed permanent employment at Shangtang Group. Anyone injured will receive full coverage for all medical expenses. Those suffering psychological trauma will have access to top specialists for long-term therapy. These are not empty promises. Once we return, formal contracts will be drafted and signed with lawyers present to witness every clause. Several women who had been sobbing violently quieted noticeably. Some lifted their heads, staring at her with swollen, red eyes. Su Qingxue spotted the shift in their expressions and felt a flicker of relief. That was enough. She kept speaking. But, her tone sharpened abruptly. Everything hinges on one thing. We have to stay alive long enough to return. A bitter laugh echoed from somewhere in the crowd. Su Qingxue ignored the sound. Our cruise ship sank yesterday afternoon. All business travel arrangements for Shangtang Group are filed with maritime authorities and insurance providers before departure. Once the vessel lost contact for more than 6 hours, the company's emergency protocols activated automatically. I turned on the automatic distress signal on my satellite phone before falling overboard. The alert was sent out. She paused and gestured toward the strangely empty ocean stretching all around them. You can all see it for yourselves. This stretch of sea is abnormal. Watches spin wildly, compasses malfunction, and day and night cycles do not align with the outside world. What does that mean? Powerful magnetic interference is active in this area. Search and rescue helicopters rely entirely on electromagnetic signals for navigation, radar, and communications. Within a magnetic disturbance of this magnitude, even if rescuers receive our distress coordinates, they cannot pinpoint our exact location. They are not staying away. They simply cannot lock onto our position yet, especially overnight. Launching search missions into this magnetic zone after dark would be tantamount to suicide. They will wait until daylight. Su Qingxue raised her arm toward the unnaturally vivid blue sky overhead. Now the sun is up. The window for rescue has opened. Silence washed over the beach for several heartbeats. The heaving chests of several survivors slowed visibly. When humans sink into total despair, they do not seek the truth. They only crave an explanation that feels plausible. Su Qingxue understood this perfectly. It was how she had survived in the capital markets. When share prices plummeted, retail investors did not demand you recite figures line by line from financial reports. They only needed one simple line. This pullback paves the way for greater gains ahead. Confidence worked much like currency. Once enough people believed in it, it held value. But what if the rescue teams can never find this stretch of ocean? A voice came from the outer edge of the group. Lu Feifei had wandered down from the mountainside without anyone noticing. Wrapped in a dark jacket that clearly did not belong to her, she stood on the periphery. Her complexion looked far better than it had the night before. Traces of food, water, and proper rest were plain to see on her face. Among survivors who had endured a freezing, hungry night, her condition stood out glaringly. Several female survivors fixed their eyes on her dry jacket. Green jealousy flickered in their stares. It was not admiration. It was resentment. The moment Su Qingxue laid eyes on Lu Feifei, her pupils constricted. Memories of the cave the night before flashed through her mind. The image of Lu Feifei sheltering closely beside Lin Fan rose, triggering a wave of visceral disgust. She forced the feeling down. Beyond the satellite phone, the crews carried a voyage data recorder. Su Qingxue avoided directly answering Lu Feifei's question and laid out another reassurance. The recorder's emergency beacon runs on an independent power supply, separate from the satellite communication system. It holds an IPX8 waterproof rating, engineered to operate normally at depths of 20,000 meters underwater. She was not entirely certain whether the specification was accurate, but she spoke with unshakable conviction, leaving no room for doubt. After years navigating corporate circles, she knew well, raw data meant nothing. The confidence with which you stated it was everything. Even if the ship sinks to the seabed, the recorder will transmit signals continuously for at least 30 days. Rescue teams have a signal, a general direction. All they need to do is break through the magnetic interference to lock onto precise coordinates. It is only a matter of time. So, Su Qingxue scanned the crowd, her gaze moving slowly over every face. What we must do now is waste no time crying here. We have to hold on until they find us. The crowd's mood stabilized visibly. The women stopped screaming, only whimpering quietly where they crouched. The male employees still looked grim, but none surged forward to shout accusations anymore. Su Qingxue breathed a quiet sigh of relief. She had weathered this crisis, for now. Then she heard another voice. Hold on for rescue. How exactly do we hold on? Chun Jian stood toward the back of the group, arms folded, light reflecting off his glasses, hiding his expression. Director Su, everything you said holds up logically, but there is one critical condition. He stepped forward 2 paces. We need to stay alive long enough for that rescue to arrive. Chun Jian calmly held up 3 fingers. 3 deadly challenges stand right in front of us. First, fresh water. He lifted his index finger. From yesterday until now, only Director Su and Director Wang have located drinkable water. In these high temperatures, an adult will die within 72 hours without water. We have already burned through nearly 20 of those hours. Second, food. His middle finger rose. Without protein and carbohydrates, the human body rapidly loses its ability to maintain core temperature. 3 of the 5 people who died last night did not freeze to death. He paused. The body exhausted its final energy reserves and could generate no more heat. Just like an engine running out of fuel, turn the key all you want, it will never start again. Third, fire. He pointed toward the smoldering remains of the campfire. Last night's fire has died out. Even if I manage to light another, we have no sustainable fuel source. We will face the same deadly dilemma again tonight. We either breathe toxic fumes and endure it, or freeze to death. We have only 2 terrible choices. He lowered his 3 fingers. A deathly silence fell over the beach. Even the crash of the waves seemed muted. Su Qingxue's lips twitched. The fragile sense of hope she had carefully built had been torn apart, point, by Chun Jian's 3 observations. She parted her lips, yet no reply came. She truly had no answers. She had never imagined she would be trapped in a wilderness survival scenario, a field she knew nothing about. Fresh water, food, fire. She could conjure none of them out of thin air. Back at the office, problems like this required only a phone call. Secretary Wang, make arrangements. 7 words, and everything was handled. Now, her secretary was either dead or sitting on the sand, gnawing nervously at her fingernails. Chun Jian did not pressure her, turning instead toward the rest of the survivors. Let me explain something to all of you. He adjusted his crooked, salt-streaked glasses, the distortion making everything he saw blurry. When a herd of antelopes in the African savanna is chased by lions, they do not scatter and run in every direction. They naturally follow one lead antelope. The leader does not have to be the strongest or the fastest. They simply know the terrain best and sense danger more keenly than the rest. Why? When fleeing for your life, 100 separate minds making decisions is far worse than one mind acting quickly. He paused. We are that herd of antelopes right now. 5 people died last night. If everyone continues to look out only for themselves, fighting over whatever they can grab, more bodies will litter this beach by sunrise tomorrow. No one spoke on the sand. Sea wind howled, stinging skin as sand whipped through the air. That is why I propose we select one person to take overall command. All water, food, fuel, and manpower will be distributed centrally. Those who follow orders stand a chance to survive. Anyone who disobeys. He did not finish the sentence. But every single person understood the unspoken threat. Su Qingshue's brows knotted tightly together. Chen Jian's reasoning was airtight. But one critical question remained. Who would be chosen to lead?